Hey, good morning, Charlie and the rest of the committee. I think we still need one more for a quorum, right?
We got Jason Jones just signed on, so we've
Oh,
got
George Jason. Okay. Okay, good. One, two.
so we have a quorum. I'm gonna call the meeting to order. It's 9:01. Maria, can we have a roll call?
Yes. All right. Charles Bolton,
Here.
Jason Jones,
Present.
Jason Owens,
He's raising his hand. You're muted.
Mike Houston,
Here.
Kurt Clark, Dr. Aaron Ali, and Ruben Salmon. Salmon? I don't know. Sorry,
Ruben, where's like? Okay, I don't see him here.
Okay. So we're missing Kurt Clark at the moment.
Brandon, Rubenson.
Yes.
Sorry.
And Brandon.
Yeah.
Okay, you have a quorum.
Okay, we have a quorum. We'll have invocation. Jason, would you lead us in invocation?
Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you for the many blessings you've bestowed upon us. And Lord, just lead us and guide us in the duties in which the state has put forth in our path. Lord, let's just keep those that we are serving in mind and do the best of our ability in your name, Jacob. Amen.
Amen. And we'll do the pledges. The United States and Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
Flag
of
of
the
the
United
States of America.
and
to the republic
And
for which it stands,
one
one nation,
under
under God,
indivisible.
indivisible,
liberty,
with liberty and justice for all.
and the state flag.
Honored
And
Honor
the
the
Texas flag,
I
pledge
pledge
allegiance
allegiance
to
to
Texas, one state,
one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Okay, do we have any public comment?
Well, I wanted to introduce, we have one of our commissioners on, Jay Carnes. I don't see his video yet, but with regard to the transportation topic we raised at our last commission meeting that's on the agenda. I think Jay probably has some comment on that, but Jay, you're welcome to comment now, or if you wanted to wait until we get to that agenda item, you can.
I'll wait till I get to that agenda item. Also on the meeting is Tim Baker.
Okay.
Also,
He works for you?
he does.
Okay, good. Well, welcome, Tim. And I see we also have Mandy Villarreal Salvo. Mandy is our new director of anatomical for the agency. She's actually starting Monday, but I wanted to introduce her to you. Mandy comes to us from the Texas House of Representatives. She had worked as a legislative director in the Texas House for Keith Bell, State Representative Keith Bell, and many other positions in government. She just recently, I think, concluded a term as city councilwoman in Hutto, Texas, and wanted to give her the opportunity to introduce herself to y'all. Y'all meet her much more going forward. But Mandy, go ahead.
Hi, everybody. Thank you, Eric, for the introduction. I'm looking forward to working with y'all starting on Monday. And I'm pretty up to date on everything anatomical. Worked on Senate Bill 2721 last session when it got over to the House. And I think Eric and Maria have kept me pretty well up to date over the past few weeks. So definitely, yeah, excited to get going. And my almost former boss, Representative Keith Bell, was the chair for Sunset. So I'm very familiar with the Sunset process and the staff over there, and looking forward to being with you guys. But yeah,
We're excited to have you,
hi.
and you don't have to stay on the whole time. I just wanted to give people an opportunity. I know you had other obligations today, but thank you for coming and joining us.
All right, bye, y'all. Have a great meeting.
Thanks.
And we also have John Chandler here. John is our staff attorney at the agency. I think you started after our last meeting, or you were at our last meeting.
Was that the last
I
meeting?
think it was the last
Yeah.
meeting you were at, so
Yeah.
that's good. And so that's just everybody I see from the agency that's here, and I think we can move on to the public. We got a lot of members of the public that are on the call as well. I can see here. So
And we can see that Kurt Clark has signed on.
okay. So welcome, Kurt. Does anyone, we can unmute you if you have a comment, if you'd raise your hand, if you're a member of the public and want to comment during the public comment period. I don't see anybody wanting to do that. I guess it's back to you, Chair Fulton.
So first item on the agenda is a review and discussion reports and updates for the work groups. Dr. Ali, you have anything?
Yeah, my only question is we made some edits at the last funeral commission meeting, and Chair Opiola, you had made some edits too. Do we have the most updated red line copy of all the proposed rules?
I believe Maria sent them to the commissioners. I don't know if she sent them to y'all, so I think she'll send them. She can send them out to you just real shortly. So we have. They will be published in the Texas Register in 2 tranches. So the first tranche is going to be published July 3rd, and then that's going to include the rules that were adopted, not the ones that were sent for publication. That's your inspection rule and your form, and I believe some of the repealers will also be published on the July 3rd. The Secretary of State's office sent back the bulk of the rules that we approved for publication at our last commission meeting. They wanted us to have them, I guess, repeal the old rule and publish the new rule with the text all together rather than have strike-throughs between the old SAB language and the new language that was published by the commission at the commission meeting. And so it's a formatting issue because the old rules were transferred, and they thought that it was best that we just repeal the old SAB rule and then have all the language new at the bottom rather than have strike-throughs. And so I believe that that will be published on the 10th.
Yes.
In the Texas Register, which would be the end of next week. So Friday, we're going to see one tranche get published, and then the next Friday, we'll see the other tranche, the bulk of the rules get published. But y'all should have them in your inbox, hopefully by the end of the meeting.
Yeah, excellent. And Maria, thank you for all your help with all this work and moving all the rules around and proposed rules back and forth with us. Maybe as we go forward, when we make edits that are going to be proposed or going to be put on the registrar, that we have those sent out to the committee so we can review, as there have been a lot of changes. And I remember at the last funeral commission meeting, we had some commissioners that had some
Amendments.
issues and changes that they wanted, and it's hard to keep up with which one we actually are putting forward. So I appreciate you sending that to all of us, so then we can take that and be able to give proper input at these meetings. And then I have one question for you, Chair Opiola, or our attorney. When we have these proposed rules, are we allowed to distribute them to stakeholders? Can they call and ask? Because I've been asked, and I said I don't know what the proper
Public record. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, everything, nothing is a secret at this agency. So I always want to be as transparent as possible. I mean, this is a public meeting as well. Anybody on this call, any member of the public can comment, and so there are no hidden secrets at this agency. So.
No, I just wanted to make sure that I didn't break any rules or anything of that sort. So I will distribute those proposed rules to stakeholders that have asked for them. So thank you for that clarification. Chair Fulton, I don't have a particular of the things we've done in the past. I know multiple stakeholders have given their input into some of the proposed rules, and I know those are in there. And I know Maria Haynes has sent those out to us already for us to discuss and look at ahead of time, so we know and can speak about it more clearly today. I'm happy to move through your agenda, but I don't have any input into the agenda item 5 currently.
Okay. Do we have any comments over the comments that were posted on the online?
I have multiple things that I want to discuss. I know Dr. Gilbert from Texas Tech was kind enough to look through a lot of the proposed rules and give his input, and he has picked on a few things that do need clarification, some administrative, some I think very good discussion points, and happy to go through them one by one from 2061 on. I think he's got 1, 2, number 4, number 5, or the 206s that he's touched on. And unless there's other sections that the committee would like to go over to as we go through these proposals. So I know
do you want to share your screen, or do you want us to, because I think Maria probably has the final copies that got published in the, I think I might have them too. If you want to have them on the screen while you go through them.
Sure, if you want. I also have Dr. Gilbert's comments broken down into just thoughts and processes, so we can share both or we can go back and forth. I'm happy to show the part that he's brought up, and we can all look at it together and see what he's commented on. And it's just got some feedback in there. And then we can always throw up the actual 206.1 and look and see if there's anything that kind of that we all need to look at and have the whole public that's on here today look at also. Chair Fulton, is it okay if I share my screen right now to show Dr. Gilbert's comments?
Yes, I'm good with that.
Okay, let me get on here to share.
By the way, while he's working on that, I want to thank personally each of you guys. The work that y'all have done has been just tremendous over the last 2 months, and I just can't thank you enough for all the work that y'all put into this. And we've had a lot of catching up to do, and I know we have a tough agenda today, but this is not meant to all be accomplished today. This is just kind of the next set of things that we have been tasked with doing after we've gotten these rules published. So thank you.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate you saying that. I think it's always nice to hear good positive comments back. So thank you for saying that. Here's what I have from Dr. Gilbert's comments, and it does talk about, 5 stakeholders made comments about 206.1. And the stuff like amend, endorse, root, flag, that's for my own personal part. But obviously, the committee, I'd love to hear their discussion on what we think we should do or shouldn't do, what we propose to the commission itself. But in 206.1, there's discussion of Dr. Gilbert had pointed out to C5 on brain versus microscopic versus laboratory scope. And his statement was, we need to make sure to separate microscopic from brain specimen. That's whether a brain falls under the commission, and just understanding gross specimen versus microscopic specimen, and to have that discussion. And his recommendation was kind of to draw out the line explicitly, make sure that the funeral commission's purview is over whole and gross specimen total. I have brain on here, but all throughout, versus microscopic, paraffin blocked, or cell or tissue cultures, and wanted to make sure that we have explicitly said that in B3. And Mr. Fulton and Chair Opiola, do we feel that we've made this explicit, or is it still kind of gray zone?
Well, with regard, I mean, that's we're asking your advice on this. I think we tried to handle it in the amendment that we made at the commission meeting, but
what did we write on that? And I apologize, I don't have.
What do y'all think? Y'all are in the industry, so y'all tell us whether we did it right.
My suggestion would be that it's clearly delineated in the rule that there is a difference between whole and gross specimen versus microscopic specimen, which I know a lot of stakeholders have brought up that issue too, to make sure that we don't start getting into the microscopic area or the paraffin blocks and those kind of things. What I don't have in front of me is the actual proposed rule to make sure that the language is explicit.
I think I can share. Let me actually, I'm not joining the meeting, so just give me a second. I'll join the meeting and I can share what we have. Just give me a moment.
But Charlie, does the rest of the group feel the same about this, or do we feel different about this?
I'm right on it with you, because, these microscopic things that they bring in, ganglia and stuff like that, that's not our purview.
I agree. The rest of the committee, do any of y'all have any for or against statements about that?
I agree with you, Dr. Ali.
No, I agree. We need to do something because right now I got, one of our NIH grants that's held up. They won't send anything into the state of brain specimens, not whole brains or anything, but, bigger than a biopsy. And it's been a holdup right now, and we're still waiting on, well, I don't know what's going to happen with it. The SAB's never governed it. And this is NIH grant stuff that's coming in from NIH sponsored stuff. But I guess they sent the application in and they were invoiced for $5,900 for 28 pieces of brain. And of course, the grant's already been, there's no money for that. So it's a big issue right now with us. And we're still waiting to see how that's going to be resolved. Hopefully it's explicit in this that we can get it resolved today so we can get these people at least off my back and off Maria and everybody else's back too, because they are actually, it's been a mess. I know that because the UT lawyers are involved and stuff trying to get explanation. And I guess they're waiting on us today. Hopefully it gets resolved.
Well, I didn't know. I thought we had approved the UT Health items at our May meeting. It's for some reason they haven't been approved. This was the import.
They were approved now, but they put an invoice of $5,900 for the specimens.
From who?
From
the
Victoria.
commission?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yeah.
We'll work on this after the meeting, if you don't mind.
Oh no, I mean, it's just, it's been ongoing and they keep asking me about it. And I'm like, well, it's coming up in the meeting. I know that. So we'll hopefully this will explain it, everything. And then it gets resolved on them. It'd be very nice.
It sounds like we have a pretty good majority of us feeling that we need to make sure it's clearly and explicitly stated that, gross specimens, whole specimens are different than microscopic and, biopsy type level tissue. So it sounds like the recommendation from the committee to the Funeral Commission is to make sure that the language in that B3 explicitly and clearly defines what the Funeral Commission would have purview over and what they will regulate and what they don't regulate, which would clear up issues like this because we certainly don't want to stop NIH grants and other type of research that has to do with more microscopic level tissue that shouldn't be, from our perspective, under the Funeral Commission's purview of regulatory.
Definitely, Dr. Ali. I have it up on the screen. This is what will be published in the register. So it does say brain specimens, but if we need to, I think you had some different language on your screen. I don't know how we could share both, or if you just dictate what you're thinking.
I apologize. I have my screen. Can you share your screen for just a second and just take over mine? Yeah.
His is shared right now.
Right now, it looks like I'm sharing. Let me stop my share.
Yeah, he gave me a message that someone else is sharing. Do you want to share over them? And so I clicked yes.
Let's see if yours comes up.
It must be reduced down, Dr. Ali, because I can see his.
Oh, okay. Let me see if I can just. It's interesting. I just see everybody else, but what he's sharing. Oh, here we go. I got it. It's a whole different screen. Okay.
I've highlighted the
Yes,
language
sir.
will be published. So if y'all have any comments on that before we adopt it in August, that would be helpful.
It sounds like that should cover everything, such as what
Yeah.
Jason's bringing up about the NIH. Is that correct? Does anybody see a weird gray zone here?
But should we change that such as to including slides and paraffin blocks? So if you have a small specimen of brain that isn't on a slide or a paraffin block, but it's not a whole piece.
That's what I was going to suggest also, Chair Fulton, was that we,
Those two words there, such as, need to be, and take out such as and put it including.
In histological, up there, a couple words back, should cover, Jason, if I'm correct, the material you're talking about too, right? So let's say it's a tiny bit bigger than microscopic. Let's say it's a punch biopsy, right? Once again, I don't consider that gross specimen.
Yep, I agree.
Well, we don't hear, so our in-house committee that governs all the specimens that are used in the UT system, a biopsy is not even governed by the in-house committee because of that reason. It's so small.
So do we need to put the word biopsy on there? Just in case a biopsy is a tiny bit bigger than a microscopic slide? Maybe that'll help out because I know in a lot of research they talk about taking biopsies to be able to break down to a paraffin block or cell tissue culture.
Yeah, that would work.
Yep. I think hopefully that should cover it. I don't, if it's the entire brain or half the brain, I consider that a gross specimen. But when you're talking about small pieces like a biopsy or histological samples, I think that should cover all type of research that should allow the right regulatory body.
It just says brain specimens. You don't say gross or whole brains. I mean, do you need to make that clear?
I think that's clear there.
And the or before biopsy, I don't know if that's necessary. Maybe just
I
a
would
comma.
take the or out and I'll just put a comma so they don't get mixed with fluid. Yep, as a whole entity itself.
Oh, I see.
I like that. I think that helps cover a lot of the research type organizations, especially NIH grants and those kind of things, to make sure that we don't step on their toes and allow the universities and other research entities to do their job.
Now,
Yep.
Is gross specimen defined anywhere? I mean, like, what I feel like this is aimed at is like
Brandon's here.
preserved slides, right? Hey, sorry.
Yeah.
How's it going?
That's good.
But yeah, if we were going to take like a core sample or something of the brain, does that like where is the line drawn?
Right. And I kind of consider that as a biopsy. Brandon, if that's you, I apologize. I don't have my screen up, but it's you don't want to get to the point of how many centimeters or how big or how much weight. That just gets way too crazy, right? But I think, if you took half a brain, that's a gross sample, right? If you took a punch biopsy, a core biopsy, a histological slide, that should fall under this microscopic and laboratory type material.
Basically, I always view it as less than 50% of the overall total of that microscopic, or what it would have been as a gross specimen of the organ would be less than 50%. Then you would call it more of a, like you're saying, core specimen. At that point, it's not half of it; it's less than half. That way, if you had say, I know there's a different term, and Dr. Ali could probably have the vernacular on it, but say we went in and did a removal of, say, 3 lobes of a lung. Well, that's basically half of one side, depending on which lobes we're removing. So it would be less. You would be removed. It would still be, less than the total amount.
Gotcha. And specifically designated for research or study.
Yeah, correct. In a microscopic or laboratory, it's not like you're taking in for full anatomical education or dissection. This is for laboratory research purposes.
Gotcha.
I don't think that we talk about that distinction between gross specimens and non-gross specimens in here. Do we need to add a definition that makes that clear, or add that to the bottom of this, that this is not including gross specimens? I know that that's kind of inferred, but
yeah, the question that I think Jason is bringing up is kind of a percentage, right? So if you had in the definition section that a gross specimen is defined as anything larger than 50% of the organ, then everything below that would be, in essence, you know, microscopic in essence, but I hate to call it microscopic because a third of the brain is not microscopic. You can hold it in your hand as you can a lobe of a lung. But
I mean, half of a lung would then be microscopic.
correct. So, you know, do you call it, maybe the word, it's not microscopic. It's,
Yeah, there's a danger associated with drawing that line.
yes.
But you have two different terms in this. It's microscopic and laboratory material derived. So the half the lung would be laboratory material.
Quick questions. One of our labs gets, you know, like full kidneys or full prostate. So, you know, prostate ain't very big. So, you know, they get spleens, they get stuff like that. So if they get half the spleen, it's okay. If anything over a half, they're going to have to register.
Well, this is laboratory material derived, right?
Yeah,
To-
that's
to
all
Charles's
laboratory
point, right?
derived.
So
but
it's designated for lab research.
Right. And maybe the word laboratory versus research material derived. So if you did microscopic and research material derived from a body or specimen, then that helps that process out. Instead of throwing a percentage, you're saying, I'm not taking this heart out to do a whole dissection and teaching and everything around it. I'm removing part of the heart because I want to look at congestive heart failure, and we're doing it for research purposes and how this medication affects congestive heart failure and the cell structure in there. So if you put the word research in there, that might help. The microscopic is microscopic. That's like the paraffin blocks and the cell tissue cultures. And the research material is, yes, Jason, if you guys need to take a lower left lung, then that's research material because you're doing research on it, right?
Well, that would exempt a lot, Carly. That would exempt a lot of my labs on the research material because they don't get any of this material from the Will Body program. It's all, you know, out of state where they derive that from, not from a NATO, but from, you know, the other research material.
That would also answer the question that's in the chat. She asked about a small sample of femur, where would it fall, and that would be under research material.
Does anybody see a weird loophole in here that could? I don't. I like the word research. I think it lets a lot of true research things occur without having regulatory slowing it down or stopping it.
Right. And typically, like they have overseeing boards, and you know, there's someone responsible there for conducting that research. So
is that all federally regulated?
Yeah, by the NIH.
So what if we said and federally regulated research material?
Well, there's state, there's federal, there's a couple things there. I hate to knock it down to just federal or scope it to federal. If you left it open to just research, wouldn't that conclude that it's both federal or state?
You mean federally funded research, or
because if you go in there and say regulated, then you're throwing it back underneath the commission because some of it's state regulated,
right? Because
I think we leave it as research.
Who in the state regulates that medical research?
Well, there's like CPRIT, the Cancer Research Institute of Texas, that has, you know, multi-millions of dollars that they distribute out to people all throughout Texas for research or bring in researchers in, and they do a lot of cancer research. And so the materials they use would be a state-funded organization. So that's where I think when you start scoping it, I mean, you could put federal and state if you want. That would cover everything, and then you'd be covered.
Well, I mean, we're like a private research organization, right? So we're not taking state funds or federal funds. But I mean, we're obviously, you know, we've gone through and our inspected anatomical facility through the state. I don't know if that falls under that definition, but
do you guys have IRB?
We have an IRB. Yes.
That's what I was gonna say. You do have an IRB. So, you know, I'm wondering if Jason would, if the word IRB was in there, would that cover everything you guys are doing? IRB.
Institutional Review Board, is that what you're referring to?
Yeah, Institutional Review Board. So if you said microscopic and IRB research, IRB approved research material, or IRB, how do you say this? IRB approved.
Because any federal, state, or private research would have an IRB.
Right. So microscopic and maybe Cheropil, this wording goes at the end of this, microscopic and material derived from body or specimen. Well, let me see.
Did you
Whatever
see
the
what I
whatever the
put?
language needs to be to make this work.
What's wrong with leaving it as research material?
Review board approved research material. Because what I don't want to have is people saying, "Oh, I'm doing research," and it's something where they're really abusing the corpse. You get what I'm saying, and they're using this as a loophole to get around that.
Yeah, and I don't think this will affect, gross bioskills labs. I mean, we don't get to microscopic levels. We're not doing things, so you don't need IRB approval for labs and those kind of things. Those are gross specimens that would actually be under the TFSC versus this. And you're right, Chair Opiola is the random joker that says, well, I'm doing research in my garage and I want to do this stuff because I'm a research person and I'm approved to do it. And it's not under your purview, so you can't stop me.
Well, IRB don't cover cadaver parts anyway, so
Well,
it's
that's supposed to be under the TFSC. We want that to be, right. So we're talking about what we want to exempt away from the Funeral Commission, right?
correct.
Right. And so I think if it's an institution review board approved the research material, that you have to get that material for that IRB study, then I think that should be exempt and allow them to do their bit.
Yes, sir.
I agree.
Sounds like everybody agrees with that wording.
Okay.
Y'all want to move on to the
Let's move on to the next one.
Yes, sir. Let's see. The other thing that was brought up was plastinate and skeletal carve out is another thing.
I hate to fall back. I'm okay with where we're at, but I just wanted to throw another thought out there. Would we want to have any kind of application towards clinical research? Or would that be going too deep into the woods?
Wouldn't that be IRB approved?
Yes.
Because I know you can't do clinical research in the hospitals or university settings without having IRB approval. And if a private organization like, just picking Neuralink is doing things, it sounds like they're telling us that they get IRB approval too.
Correct. Yeah.
Right.
Chair Fulton, there's a question.
Yes. Go ahead.
I mean, there's a question on the chat over there. I don't know if it was answered.
That's the one I mentioned a while ago.
Oh, okay.
Where would a small bone sample, say a femur fall, is cut bone samples that are bigger than a histological slide going to be addressed in this section? That's what the chat says. If y'all can't read it, we have it up now.
I think we addressed that in the fact that if it's larger, like a cut section of a femur, obviously that's not microscopic, but if it's being used in that clause of an IRB approved research, then it's not under the Funeral Commission purview for regulatory.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense.
Are we okay to move on?
Jones?
I'm good. Like I said, it was in my head and I thought I'd put it out there and get another consensus.
Well, let's move on to the next thing. We're going over.
Yeah, I think the next thing Dr. Gilbert brought up is plastinate and skeletal carve-outs, and he actually endorsed this. I don't really see anything about it. I think he said he endorsed it. He brought up on C16 allied health terminology, and his statement was allied health is dated, health professions or health sciences is more current. And his recommendation was to amend C3 definition to replace allied health with health professions.
Give me a second. Let me find it. Health professions, allied health professions.
Yeah, he's saying that allied health is dated, that a lot of universities and medical schools and those kind of groups don't use allied health anymore. They use health professions.
Health sciences.
Right. And so his thing was, do we want to
sciences or health professions?
He's got both statements in there, health professions or health sciences. He was just asking it, should we remove the word allied health? Now, look, these are his recommendations. We don't have to do this. It's just that's what he brought up. And I want to make sure that the stakeholders who took the time and effort to write up things, we should discuss the point. If we feel, I'm not at the university, so Jason, Charlie, you guys are. If that makes more sense from your perspective, absolutely, let's change it.
We refer to health sciences.
Okay.
Then
then I would recommend we change the word allied health to health sciences, or we could say health sciences / professions if you want to cover both words
Yep.
and have it in there.
That would do it there. If we did that, just health sciences / professions.
Okay. So that's just a terminology update in essence.
It's in our name, UT Health Science Center.
Right.
Yeah. All of this.
And that's what I would suggest. And if the committee is good with it as a majority, then we should just change that word from allied health to health professions / sciences.
Do you want profession sciences? Tell me what you want.
We want health sciences / professions.
Okay.
Some universities use health sciences, others use health professions, but they mean the same thing. Whereas allied health is, I think, dated. That was more like, PT would have been allied health, or occupational therapy would have been allied health.
What else you got on here?
So C18 and C19, this is kind of a bigger point on setting versus entity, recipient versus transfer. It's getting into some. I do see what he's saying. His point was Dr. Gilbert refers to approved entity over approved setting and asks whether authorized entity equals authorized setting, and stresses that will body programs and NATOs take donors directly while anatomical facilities receive only by transfer. One of the things we have in here is I think the phrase of authorized persons, and authorized persons in our definition stands for a person or a corporation. And the thought process here is, should we have changed that to authorized individual, which actually means a person, a human being, and it's not mixed up with a corporation? Because currently right now, when we say authorized person, it does mean a human being and a / corporation, like it could be an entity, right? And so it starts to get a little muddy as to who we're talking about. I had, let me bring this up real quick. I'm going to share my screen.
Okay, let me unshare mine. There we go.
So this is kind of this bit right here in the middle of
And Dr. Ali, if you don't mind emailing these documents to us, that would
be happy to. So those are kind of the three entities that he's kind of proposing, and I'm looking at too, versus authorized persons. This is more of breaking it down to these three clean, distinct ideas, and the ideas an individual, right? Versus entity versus setting. And let me kind of scooch down just a hair for a second. And this is kind of what I'm looking at, what maybe Dr. Gilbert's recommending too, is an authorized entity. I think we have that very clearly, right? A will body program, a non-trans NATO, or an anatomical facility. This is the part where an authorized individual is a natural person who can receive or use the body or an anatomical specimen. And then approved setting is an actual physical venue with the required biosafety and access controls. It's described more of a venue. It's not, it doesn't name an organization. And so an entity would be Texas Tech or A&M or Metamarket, right? An individual would be myself. And then an approved setting is the setting inspected and clean or right for the event. And he was suggesting that authorized person should be dropped as a catch-all. And this is what it would affect if we made this proposal. And I think this is what his issue is right here on 206C7, is authorized person currently is both an entity and an individual.
Yeah, that should be an individual.
And I think where this is all going to is there's an authorized individual that should be able to order the tissue, work with the issue versus an entity is the place or the area, right? So this is what he's proposing or looking at in general.
So you would just add those two, add authorized individual and authorized entity as definitions?
Correct.
Okay.
And the authorized individual, in essence, would be replacing this authorized person, because this authorized person has an entity and an individual mixed in it. And in essence, we're saying, let's get rid of the word authorized person and create an entity part and an individual part. So there's the entity and there's the individual.
So that would go under definitions, right?
Correct.
And then we take the authorized person out of the 206.1C.
Correct.
We also have to make sure that we're not going to cross over by making this alteration in here is on within the entity and individual. I know on our request forms, we have to have our authorized individual, and we've also made rule that individual that's going to be conducting has to be on site while that is being done. So we have to make sure that our request forms still are inclusive of these three key set points, so that we don't have an authorized individual requesting something for an authorized setting that is not part of an authorized entity. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and I think that's what it was going for, is all three of these need to occur for a proper setting, right? It needs to be an authorized individual.
For a proper event.
Correct. Yes. And separating this out helps more clearly define versus authorized person, as we have currently right here as it reads today. Meaning, a university is an authorized entity, right? And you're an authorized individual. But if you're doing this in the hallway by the lecture room, it's not really an approved setting, right?
Correct.
So all three of these have to match or meet to kind of qualify for all this, right? So it kind of keeps the whole, midnight autopsy in Seattle that happened, or someone trying to do something in a garage. I'm an authorized individual, but I can't go doing it outside of my facility because it's not an authorized setting. It just kind of helps out with this. I heard in the past from some of the senators at the discussions of doing stuff in lobbies. I don't think things are done in lobbies. I think there was a misunderstanding that they're actually done in the ballroom. But if the ballroom is an approved setting with authorized individual doing it, an authorized entity that's running it, then, I think that works out.
Yeah. Now the 3 point is important because as with the SAB, we've had to remove credit or authorizations from entities because when they were originally inspected, it started as a small training that was going to be done in an OR. All the settings, the individuals, the entity, all was approved as an entity. However, as the popularity of the event grew, while it was an authorized entity and an authorized individual making the request, they moved the setting to a conference room up on the 5th floor that was not conducive with the utilization of anatomical specimens. So this is a 3-point checkpoint to ensure that that's not occurring anymore in any situation, is that we've got entity, individual, and setting is all proper, just like Dr. Ali is planning out there, and it covers all across the board, whether it's through a university system providing to another hospital that's running some sort of trauma training. And because that's what I was just referring to, is how that actually occurred, is that it grew in number, and they were thinking, oh, well, we were authorized to receive, and when it was approved, they didn't factor in their setting had changed, and therefore now it was not an authorized event.
So how's that going to cross-reference with the web page? Because it's going to have a drop-down menu for the approved facility, but how, once the individual, there's 179 authorized anatomical facilities, they're going to request it. But how are you going to police them knowing that, oh, I guess it's in the rules that you can't do that, but if I,
Well,
just
because
as you're saying, Jason, okay, it expanded way past my lab space, so let's move it to another one. So how are you going to police that on the website is what's going to be the issue.
Well, that's where inspection comes in at that point, because that's
Yeah.
how it was discovered on our point, is the inspections rotating through the space. You walk in, and the way we always started every inspection to every facility back in the day was, I want you to walk me through the process of the body has just arrived. Take me from A to B and where y'all have been conducting.
Correct.
You don't mention, show me your approved space. You just say, you just had an event. Walk me through the process of what took place. And
the drop down menu doesn't automatically approve them anyhow.
No, I do definitely. I mean, they got to be they'll be approved facility if they're in the drop down menu.
That it doesn't approve them to have the event though.
Right. And then that's where the person aspect that Commissioner Opiella has been referring back to is that whomever is screening these will then go, where in your facility you're showing room XYZ, is this your space? Well, on the cross-reference for that entity, they're going to have that room number because we asked that on the inspections. Correct. And it's also asked, and you're going to cross-reference. We come in for an inspection and discover, because it's not just walk in, walk out. You have to start talking to everybody. People are going to tell you more than they, intend to. And if we discover that it has been moved to another location, then that's when that's addressed.
Take a look at the language up on the screen, and Dr. Ollie, you might have to unshare yours in order to see it because I just shared over you again. I added the word inspected to approved setting, so that addressed what Jason and Charlie were talking about just now. Added the definition of authorized entity in accordance with the instruction that you just had, and then changed authorized person to individual, and then added the word natural.
Should it be natural or defined person?
Is there a difference?
And keep in mind,
defined would refer back to our definition.
Keep in mind, we also talked about the non-purpose built facilities would always have to be inspected. So through a process of having it on the website, they would not remain as a authorized setting. So they would always be re-inspected.
Right.
Correct.
They would be covered under the other setting approved by the commission.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes.
And I think the one thing that we all want to be cognizant of and want to make sure that we can accommodate appropriately, that there are organizations that want to do this at a convention center, that want to do it at a hotel ballroom, and I'm not against that. I just want to make sure it's done correctly, because I've had some societies where they said, yeah, we do our dissection in the ballroom, and then we have 6 or 7 hotel rooms upstairs that we take the arms to, or take into a different conference room and do it. And that's not part of the ballroom that was inspected and cleared. And I think that's what we're trying to avoid. Is we're not trying to stop this to happen at a ballroom or a convention center. What we want to make sure is people just don't start walking off with anatomical specimens in rooms they shouldn't be at, because that's when someone takes the picture or some video happens, and next thing you know, it's on the news and everybody gets attacked as to why this is happening, right? And so this is not a way to squeeze people to not be able to do it at these sites. It's just to make sure that the right people are getting it, the right use is happening, and the right area is being used. And I think this helps cover that clearly, defines it. And so if a NATO wants to do, because they're asked by a device company to do a lab at a hotel ballroom, you can just meet these things, make sure that you're staying in the area that you've already asked the funeral commission is inspected, make sure it's the authorized individual, make sure it's the authorized entity, and make sure it just doesn't walk off. And then we've defined other people that can be involved in this BioSkills lab or this event. And so I think it still allows everybody to do what they want to. It's just we're keeping it tight on purpose because of the issues that have come up in the past. We want to make sure those don't come up in Texas.
I'll just say, as a member of the public, I would never want to stay in a hotel room where a cadaver has been dissected on the bed of in the hotel room or in the tub of the hotel room. I think the public would be appalled if that was permitted. That's just my personal opinion.
The Chair Appeal, I don't think it was ever permitted. I think it wasn't clearly defined where people are like,
people were doing it.
Right, exactly. Has it been done? Absolutely. I've heard, I've never been a part of it, but I've heard. But yeah, what we're trying to do here is at some point, everybody that's involved in this, whether it's a device company, device reps, physicians, universities, NATOs, you need to clearly understand where you can and can't, and understand who can and who can't. And that should make it very clear to you. And so you shouldn't be walking off with one to a room or to a random conference room or something like that.
Correct.
Do you need to add on number 6, approved setting means a registered inspector will body program facility and a registered non-transplant donation organization facility, since we have a registered anatomical facility? Because my program does that, if you put facility, it's inspected, it's not going to be the will body program office itself. Does that make sense, or am I thinking over?
Yeah. No.
Okay. Yeah. I think adding the word facility helps just define it clearly.
Everybody good with that?
Or other, on the last part, right where you are, Chair, or other setting approved. Does that need to be, is setting enough? Is that word enough to cover what we're doing here?
I think
that's fine.
I think that's good because we described what a setting is in the other part.
Well, we could say it's in rule. Don't we approve those under rule 2?
Yes. It's in setting is a better word because, for instance, our search and rescue organizations, that's going to be a setting, not necessarily a facility.
Yeah. Everybody good?
Do we need to say well, they're all, both the traditional and the non-traditional anatomical facilities are all registered anatomical facilities.
Yes.
Okay. That's okay. Anything else on this one? Dr. Ali, you have something else under 1?
Let me double check here, sir.
I think just to highlight, we had a motion that under C at the commission meeting under BC that deleted some of the language. There was some commentary by Dr. Gilbert, I think, and I want to make sure you notice that last line of B1C was deleted.
There's one other part, and it may be part of C19 in here about direct receipt versus transfer. I think Dr. Gilbert is asking is, do we have clearly defined that NATO's and willed body programs have direct receipt of a body, right? The donation comes to them, and then it's transferred to anatomical facilities. His concern was that wasn't clearly stated in there.
Yeah, because
where just tell me.
I believe it's either C18 or C19, sir.
Not in this group here.
Give me a definition. What definition? Because the numbering's changed.
Yeah, it has to do with receipt and transfer.
I don't see the word transfer actually in the definition.
Okay, it was something on one of his statements, and that's
it was an approved setting, Dr. Ali.
Yeah,
it was an approved setting.
6 approved settings.
Okay. In the approved setting part, is there anything that talks about receive versus transfer?
I prefer approved entity.
A little further up right there, okay.
Yeah.
He wanted approved entity instead of setting is what Gilbert has on here.
Yeah, but he was talking about the transfers and direct receipt because they referred to it at the commission several times when we take in a body, they call that a transfer. That's not a transfer. That's direct receipt.
Right.
Not a transfer until I transfer it from me to Jason or something.
Correct.
Yeah, it's not a transfer when you, as a will body program, receive a body and then use it in your educational institution. That's it's still it's not being transferred from room A to room B.
That's a direct receipt though.
Right.
Yeah.
And staying at that will body program, there shouldn't be a transfer fee if it's going from it
Correct.
to the bioskills lab they have there, right? It's part of their entity, right?
Correct.
Still under my purview.
Correct. Right.
Hey guys, do we have an extra and in number 7 there? After it says NATO or and an anatomical facility? I think that and is not needed. Thank you.
Got it.
Thank you.
And then is there a section on non-traditional anatomic facilities in 2061?
There is not. Oh, yes, there is. Right there.
Okay, so his thing was hold the non-traditional anatomic facility definition in 2061 as drafted, but carry the safety concern to agenda item 6. Okay, so I think later on when we get to agenda item 6 about minimum standards for hotels or convention center facilities, we can discuss at that point. So that's what he had brought up. Would prefer activities occur only in purpose-built or approved healthcare facilities. Consider okay. This is the statement he has in his recommendations was prefer activities occur only in purpose-built or approved healthcare and surgical settings and consider hotel ballrooms problematic. That's a huge discussion point that he's brought up.
Well, that's a separate agenda item that
Correct.
we have today.
That's an item 6, right? So maybe we can table that.
That was something that was raised in the Senate bill. That language on that agenda item comes directly from the Senate bill. I think that's probably something that needs to be a separate rule because it's a pretty big discussion about what is and what's not permitted there.
Correct. But that was something that came up in his paperwork, and that was it for his statements that he had made. I think we went through everything from the macroscopic to microscopic to Plastinase Allied Health, setting versus entity, receipt versus transfer, and then non-traditional anatomical facilities, like you said, Chair Opio, that we'll get to that. That's a larger discussion point, but it is on agenda item 6. That was all I had for 2061. And
okay.
All that
I just want to take you back to that B1C. Were y'all fine with that language being deleted that was in B1C, or that was during the commission meeting? That was a motion that was adopted in the commission meeting.
What was
I want to bring that to your attention. That was the entire last line of that.
So you're saying it's not, this C is not the complete of what we have omitted now?
It's what's being published, but it was not what the advisory committee.
What was the last line that we deleted?
Give me a second.
Yeah, there were some large sections, Charlie, that they were taking out at the beginning of the meeting.
Give me a second. So there was a line that you had in there that was this actually came after the stakeholder meeting. We had some comments during the stakeholder meeting that talked about making sure that we did not, and actually it's not B1C, it's B2. 1 second, let me get, I got too many screens open here. B2, this chapter does not apply to a body whose method of final disposition is burial, cremation, entombment, mausoleum, removal from state, or donation of organs or tissue for transplant. During the stakeholder meeting, we had commentary about this was not going to step on the lawful recipients in 692A.011 of the Health and Safety Code, which would be your organ procurement organizations. They did not want to. They want to make sure that organ procurement organizations could still accept transplants, and then if they were not accepted for transplant, that the body could be donated to a will body program after the transplant procedure. Correct. Remember, y'all had a line in there that said that will body program. This does not preclude will body programs from accepting gifts of transplant in bodies intended for transplant, with organs intended for transplant, but where those were not able to be used by the transplant organization. Say someone died in circumstances that they were not able to use the organs for transplant. Do y'all recall this?
I do clearly, and I just want to make sure that there's nothing in here that stops that, right? Because we have organizations that call us and say this donor wanted to donate their transplantable organs, but after that is done, they want the rest of the body to be donated to science. So now the final disposition is donate to science. They were not passed when they're taking the tissues out for transplant, right? So at that point, there is no disposition because they're still in the operating room having the kidneys, livers, lungs taken out for transplant. But once they have passed, can the rest of the body be donated to science? Absolutely, because that's the final disposition. Once that happens, it just falls under a regular purview of a donated body, right? So there shouldn't be anything that says you can't do that. And absolutely. If a group is trying to take the cornea, trying to take the liver, and it turns out they can't for some reason, then there's no reason the family can't decide our final disposition now is to donate to science, and then it just falls under our purview. And that should never be affected in any way because that's what we've been doing in the past. It's the appropriate way of agreeing to the family's wishes of I want to donate the tissue for living transplant if I can. If I can't, and I still make the decision as a family member that's allowed to donate the body to science, then that shouldn't be stopped in any way. There shouldn't be anything in these rules that say you can't do that.
What I want to make sure, since I wasn't a part of the commission meeting, what I want to make sure, because it sounds like there may be two sides to this. I get exactly what Dr. Ali said, and we've always run that gamut. If a person was a donator of their organs and tissue, and the family says that they want to donate the rest of the body, the will body programs, we've taken those donors in historically. What I'm wondering was the question have to do with there are situations where they have gone in and harvested the tissue procurement organizations have harvested, say, heart, liver, whatever that's transplantable. And for whatever reason, that organ or item was not, turns out it failed a test for crossover for use in a transplant. They have then sent those or transferred those organs that were already in their custody and care to a research facility for further research and education. I want to make sure that we didn't remove something because that gets real deep into 692A. I think it's point 11.
Yes.
Because those, and that's something that when we get on exportation, that's something we need to look at very closely down there in the definitions, because if it is not transplantable or utilized for therapy, then that particular item falls back under the purview of the anatomical of the commission.
I would disagree.
We can't have LifeGift. What we're saying is LifeGift can't pull organs. It turns out it can't be transplanted. They can't in turn send it over to transfer it to a research facility that's doing X, Y, or Z without notifying the board.
Can I bring up a point about that?
So the language, this what you have in front of you was what was deleted. That's what led to the language that you saw on the screen earlier. That was the so Jason, you're saying that you do want those organs that were not accepted for transplant to fall under the purview of the commission, or you don't want them to fall under the purview of the commission?
No, what I'm saying is this wording here is basically saying that we can, what they took out here, if they determine not to accept the transplanted gift, the Will Body programs have why they wanted that omitted, I have no idea, because it wasn't a hindrance. That is stating that if the individual has already registered. Now, every program, or at least state program, we're going to require the next of kin to sign the anatomical donation paperwork. Even though they've already registered themselves as an organ donor, because that's different authorization. So this is, to me, is null and void. Whether it's there or not, we're still going to continue to practice accepting someone who has donated their heart, their lungs. We're going to accept those bodies in. We're going to utilize them in some other manner for bioskills training for knee, hip, shoulder. There's still plenty of anatomical specimens available on that donor. We've never denied anyone unless we're talking about
this language being deleted and not in the final rule.
I think the language is fine as long as we just put a period after transplant rather than a comma.
Correct.
I think,
but what I'm saying when we get into 206.4, and our organ donation organizations who have received organs, and then it is determined that that is not a transplantable organ, if they are going to choose to transfer that to an out, because it specifically says exportation in 206.4 is where it's highlighted. If they are choosing to provide that organ because it's been donated to them, and they're going to provide that organ to a third party outside of their organization and even out of state, that particular organ falls under the purview of the commission at that point, based on 692A.11.011 is what I'm saying. So we need to be careful how we have that worded when we get over to 206.4, because we don't have oversight for tissue, and we'll get to that. But what I'm saying is that we've got to make sure that we're pulling that back in, and that the organ and tissue procurement organizations know that anything that's not transplanted or used for therapy that's sent off to research or education has to be filtered through the commission if it's being sent out of state and it's not going to an in-state study.
So can I make a statement about
Dr.
that?
Ali, I think on the forms that Maria sent out a couple of days ago on the 2061, they have it on there, the final disposition on the death certificate as the other thing, then they have no jurisdiction over it. If they put on the death certificate on that, because the tissue bank, if they're not donating the body, they can do what they want because we don't have jurisdiction over it. It's only on definition on that one that they sent out the other day, but it's not added on here.
I think what I'm trying to get to is this: want to be extremely careful treading onto the transplant tissue organizations. And I hear what you're saying, Jason, and I understand the logic. But if someone has written that they want to do transplantable donation with their organs, right? They come into the operating room, the heart's removed, and it turns out there's some kind of issue with the heart that it can't be used in patient A or B for the transplant. And now, what do you do with that heart, right? And the tissue procurement group is saying, well, we can certainly donate this entire packet, this anatomical specimen, to a Will Body program or a NATO, and as long as the family consents and all the paperwork's done, and yes, that falls under the commission's purview now as a donated specimen. But let's say the family does not sign off on a donor consent to be donated to science falling under our purview, but they say, yes, you can send Sally's heart here to do research on it because we want to know why that couldn't be transplanted. Now it's falling under that research category that we set up earlier about microscopic and IRB kind of research material, right? So to say now that that heart is under the funeral commission's purview because it's not being transplanted, we need to make sure we know what's going on with it. But if it's being used for research purposes to understand the tissue involved in that, understand why that heart wasn't accepted, you're going to now put hundreds of small specimens that fall under the Institutional Review Board material, right? It's going to be considered material. And I don't think we should be going into that realm, or even legally do we have purview over that realm, because it's not being donated to science. That's not what the final disposition is going to be. The final disposition for this family is going to be cremate or burial, or the other ones that can be done. But if they don't sign off for donate to science as the final disposition, that tissue now can be used as an IRB approved research material. And so, the tissue is usually used for demineralized bone. It could be used for histological samples. It can be used in NIH grants. It can be used in state organizations. It can be used for private organizations who are studying pharmaceuticals that study heart tissue to make sure that the next medicine they come out with. So now you're starting to regulate that area. I don't think you should do that, nor do we have the power or authority to do that. I get what Jason's saying, that if the body is harvested and they want to donate the body, or the harvested material is not acceptable to be donated into another human being, that all that material is sent to the Willed Body Program or NATO, great. That falls under the final disposition now is donation to science. But if they do not click that box on the final disposition paperwork and they click burial or cremation, but they do want the heart to be donated to a research organization, there's plenty of that happening. The Brain Institute will come to a funeral home, or it's supposed to be an anatomically approved site. I don't think you should be able to do it at a funeral home, but they will take the brain and spine, and the body is still cremated and buried. And that brain and spine is not under the purview currently of the Funeral Commission. That goes back to the Brain and Spine Institute, where they do the research on Alzheimer's. So what you're stating is all of that should now be non-anatomical material that should be governed by the Funeral Commission. I strongly disagree, and I caution us that we shouldn't go into that area. If it's clicked as final disposition going to donation to science, then yes, it falls under this. Even that little heart does, right? But if it's going into research, I don't think we should be touching that.
That's why on what she sent us the other day, they added in red on the death certificate as the final disposition. If it says anything, burial, cremation, whatever, that doesn't purview, but it's only got to be donated to on the donation on the death certificate means that it's donated.
Then we're in 100% agreement. But if they don't click that
in
the heart,
Opiella, can you scroll up, because it doesn't show on there right now, I don't think.
I just want to make sure that if they don't click donate to science, but they still want the heart after the transplant to be given to a research institution, that should be allowed, and it shouldn't be under the Funeral Commission's purview.
It's under, what is it, A or A2
preferences. Now I can't get out of here. There we go. Okay. Sorry. Good move. Good move.
Right
okay.
here,
Where do you want to see it?
Oh, so y'all change founders recorded as donation instead of subscribe. So this is a totally different one. I guess that's the latest one. I guess the one she sent out 2 days ago is a little different on there, because y'all added on the death certificate, final disposition on death certificate is burial, cremation, tomb, and mausoleum, removal from state, or donation of organs or tissue for transplant. Because if it's not, the death certificate don't say donation on it as a final disposition, we shouldn't have any jurisdiction over it all.
And I apologize, I may have said Jason Kurt. Yeah, I agree. I'm just saying that if a transplant procurement organization has a human being on the operating table, they remove an organ and they can't use it, can they donate it to a research organization? If the family's final disposition is not donate to science, absolutely, they can donate away. If it's donate to science, then of course it falls under the Funeral Commission's purview. Are we saying the same thing?
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
I just want to make sure that we do not tread onto the procurement organization's ability to donate tissue to research organizations, as long as the family did not say, I want the body donated to science.
If they donated the body to science, then it does fall under us.
Yeah. So, well, here's this might be kind of what Kurt's saying too. So let's say they say, yeah, I want to donate this body of science. I want it to go to Texas A&M. Does the family still have the right to say, but I want the heart to be donated to this research program that's working on heart things, and that should not be under the purview of the funeral commission? There may be times where you get everything minus the heart because the heart went to research institute. Do we say now that that heart is still under the purview of the funeral commission, or was that considered microscopic or material derived for research, and it's not part of it, right? I want to make sure we don't stop that from happening. So if you get everything minus the heart, even though they did click donate the science, that heart in essence is exempt in this section right here of this section 3 of microscopic and institutional review board approved research.
Is a full heart considered gross anatomical specimen, or would it be?
Well, I think that's why we didn't put a percentage, we put institutional review board approved research, right? So if that part of the body is not being donated to science, it's being donated to a research institution, we want to be able to make sure that we can pull that out. Do you guys see the predicament I'm seeing here? I just want to make sure we don't stop.
Right. The one thing that we do need to make sure of is that if the body is accepted in to a donor program post the harvesting, in the file for that individual, we need to make sure that it is clearly stated upon intake of that individual that the individual's harvestable organs, and state what they are, were procured prior to taking custody of said individual, so that now the will body program is not liable for the tracking, and they are no longer the responsible party for those organs that have left that body prior to them taking custody of it.
Yeah, I think that's appropriate.
That sounds like something that needs to be done in the chain of custody form.
Correct.
Agreed. I think there should be detail down in that. And I think the consent should really govern a lot of this, right? If the family has consented to, I want Johnny's heart to be sent to this research institute, but I want the rest of his body to be sent to this World Body Program, that should be.
And maybe we create a form that Life Gift or any of the other OPs complete that is forwarded to the whole body program that's receiving the body, that states that we on XY date have done XYZ.
Yeah, I think clearly defined paperwork like that is awesome, because then nobody's like, well, Jason, what happened to the heart, right?
Yeah, where's the brain?
Right,
well,
exactly. That's what I want to make sure, that in the interest of science and research, that we don't stop that from happening. But if it's clearly defined in the consent that the family has consented to this, that, hey, we're giving 98% of the body to you guys for donation of science, but this heart is going to be sent to this organization to do research on it, as long as the family's consented and the consent's very clear, and then the paperwork shows that you've received this much of the anatomical specimen, then that keeps everybody in the right and makes sure it's very clearly defined, so someone doesn't say, well, what happened to the heart, right?
Right.
And that's I'm concerned if we leave that last language out, are we creating a loophole where if your final disposition on your death certificate is donation of organs, and then the rest of they procure the organs, organ procurement organization procures the organs, then are you creating a free-for-all with regard to the remains of the body?
The death certificate is not going to state bodies were donated or organs were donated. It's either going to be donation, period, which would be the whole body was donated, or it's going to be entombment, burial, cremation, or out of state, or then there's a spot that's called other.
Well, then our language here does not reflect the reality, right?
Correct.
Well, then doesn't
that's why we said before to take the term final disposition out of there, because final disposition is a death certificate term.
Right. Chair Opio, you were talking about a free-for-all. I don't think that's what is going to happen, because at the end of the day, the family has to decide, or the person who's donated their organs plus donation of science, they've already decided this in their consent and their wishes. So if a family says, we want to procure whatever organs we can for transplantable, and then the rest of the body is going to be donated to science, There's not a free for all. It's okay. Then the procurement organization says, here are the groups we work with. There's this university, there's this NATO. We give you the information, and then they help connect and contact. That doesn't become any kind of free for all or anything like that. That is the appropriate process and pathway for someone who's wanting to provide a gift in a double format, right? You've given the gift of life to people, and then you've given the gift of science to people.
Because if one of our organizations does not accept that body post the harvesting of those organs, then the family has to return to a death care provider for final disposition of that body.
Correct.
And that's when it will become a burial, cremation, whatever.
Okay.
And that would be on the death certificate at that point.
With locally here with our life gift, they know that the only thing that we allow is skin harvest or cornea. We don't allow any organs or deep bones or anything like that for us to accept them. So they work, if they get a donation, they want to know, the family wants to donate the body, they know that what they can harvest off of it, so we'll still accept it. So it won't put a burden on the family. We work hand in hand with these people, so they know for the end user or the family they want to fulfill their wishes. So they work with us and we work with them on what can and cannot be done.
Okay. Anything else on one?
Hey, can I ask what percentage of harvesting is actually used for transplant? Because at our last meeting, it was brought up like 85-90% is not used.
The lawyer, I thought, said 2% and 98% was sent to research, if I remember correctly from the last meeting.
That is really misleading to the public and probably to the commission. I think that's going to be an issue when it comes up in the commission meeting. I can tell you that.
Well, hold on a second.
When that number comes out.
Before we throw those numbers out, we've talked about a lawyer throwing it out and a different person throwing it, but we've never talked to an organ procurement organization to allow them to give the proper information. Now, here's the deal, sir, is you will procure organs and maybe the vast majority are not used. That's just the way that system works, is because you have to cross and type, you got to get tissue. That's correct. There's so many different parts of the cell that have to match the donor, and you may have that, and then you start looking out into the thousands of people that are waiting for a liver transplant, and it may turn out 99% of them can't accept it. What you don't do is say, oh, since 99% can't be accepted, we're not going to do this anymore. That's not it at all. It's that one person that can out of the 2,000, you just saved their life. But there may have been 5 livers that weren't used, and that's the odds and ratio and the numbers behind that. But I promise you, if you're on the heart transplant list and yours does match, but then 6 hearts didn't match and they were in essence not used, you're going to appreciate the fact that you were the one that was able to hit that number. That's just the way it works. That's the research and the science and the surgery. I've been involved in double lung transplants and heart transplants, and I've been involved in one that rejected in the middle of surgery and ended up, in a tragic, manner in essence. But this is the part of science and surgery and research that is on a cutting edge. And as we get better with immune response to these transplanted organs, we will have more success in these transplants. But to say that only 2% are transplanted, so we're being misled is I think is not an appropriate statement. I think what it is you've got procurement organizations that are working extremely hard to save lives, and you cannot save all of them, and all the tissue will not be used. Period. That's just the way that is.
Okay, you're putting words in my mouth.
I'm sorry, sir. I was not trying to do that.
Okay, because I'm not saying to shut down transplants. What I'm saying is if 98% or whatever that high number is being used for profit for other organizations somehow, that probably needs to be tracked within the commission.
That's what I was referring to as well, Commissioner Carnes, with this free-for-all, that if the body is not used, if the bulk of the body is not used for transplant, and if it's outside of the purview of our commission, are we creating a pipeline for unregulated use of remains. That was what I totally agree with Commissioner Carnes here, is that I don't want that to be a loophole that we're putting in this rule.
Well, just to clarify, I think I know what you meant, but it's not how it actually came out. They're not utilizing the bodies after they've harvested. That's not a free for all on the rest of the body. Okay. What they are not utilizing is the actual organ that's harvested. I want to clarify that. So what they have harvested may or may not match or be utilized. And then that item that they have harvested has been sent to a research facility pertinent to whether it's lung, liver, heart disorder, etc. But not the body. The body, no tissue transplant organization takes full custody of a body. They only harvest organs. The body is still the responsibility of the next of kin.
And Commissioner Carnes, I apologize. I just want to make sure that I clearly state what I said is no matter what happens, if you've signed up to donate your organs, whether your organs are accepted or not, the family still has the right to make the final disposition. And if the final disposition is donate to science, then 100% it falls under your purview. Right now, it's under the Funeral Commission's purview. There is no free-for-all for people grabbing the body, using parts and pieces. It is going to fall under the Funeral Commission's purview and regulatory authority to make sure that that body is used appropriately. And I think that's what these rules are doing, is to make sure that the right entity, the right person, the right individual, the right setting gets it right, and not other entities, right? So if it falls under the donation section, it's 100% under your purview and the Funeral Commission's purview to make sure it's used properly and there's not this free-for-all bit, right? If it does not, if it's not considered donation to science, then the dispositions of burial or cremation or the other things on final disposition, and that does not fall under the Funeral Commission's regulatory authority, is I guess what I'm trying to say, right? But I just want to make sure that we understand that transplant world is very difficult and complex. But if you're talking about those that are profiting from, that's the part I'm not 100% clear about, what it is they're profiting of. If it's not a final disposition of science, then it does not fall under Funeral Commission's purview. It falls under someone else's regulatory purview, right? So if there's a regulatory body that looks at demineralized bones, because if a person donates their body to science here in Texas, it falls under your commission, right? If another state says you can have a donation to science and you can take the long bones and take the marrow out of the long bones and create demineralized bone matrix that they use to create a scaffolding for implants to be planted in the bone that's used every day in the operating room, then yes, that is a profit-making organization. They're for profit. There could be nonprofit ones too, but there could be profit funeral homes and nonprofit funeral homes. But that is a profit-making organization, and they do make a profit on that. Is that illegal or wrong? I don't think it is. I think they're still doing something to apply to science and apply to surgery and apply to these implants that are done in the operating room. So does that fall under our regulatory purview and what we're doing? I don't think so. I think there's got to be some other entity out there that governs that. But for us, once the body is donated in Texas under donation, 100% it's under us. And we need to make sure that the body is appropriately being used. And I think that's what all these rules that we're making is to make sure that those things are being done.
I just have a concern that the family should know that there's a 90-something% chance that this part will not go to another human, yet will be used for profit for a company. Now, if they're okay with it, but and I'm not sure if that falls under our purview, as you say, we talk about pieces once the full body is donated and tracking those. And I believe we weren't going to worry about if it was, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if there were no bones involved, but there are bones involved a lot of times here. So I think it's something we probably need to keep in mind and possibly address, because if the public hears this, I think it's going to be bad. Because I've never heard that number before. I was shocked when I heard it recently.
Yeah, I just want to make sure that that data that was given to you is accurate, first of all, and that we ask the appropriate entities about that data as to what's used and what's not. Still am a little confused about these numbers, 98% or 2%, those things, as to who's defining that and who's making that statement and what data do you have to back that up with, right, sir? So I say, well, let's make sure that the facts are correct and the data that's given to you and the commission is appropriate and correct. And then make sure we're talking about exactly the right part of this, right? Is it, if the whole body is donated to Kurt's group or Jason's group, and then that body is then sent to an anatomical facility and used, then that's all correct and appropriate. But if there's something in there that I haven't heard about or don't know about, that someone is sneaking long bones out and doing something and not following any of these rules, and they're making a profit off of it, 100%, let's go get them. But the public's consent paperwork shows them what can be used for their body, what can be done, disarticulation, dismemberment. Those things are all in the consent form very clearly written, and they need to understand that. That's why we also have our one pager. And I 100% agree with you that the public should never be misled or not understand what's happening, right? And so I agree with you 100% on that, sir.
Dr. Ali, those numbers came from the actual attorney for all those programs. She said she represented all those programs, and she gave the number in the meeting that you were late to when you signed on. That's where that number come from.
Oh, yeah, I wasn't part of that stakeholder meeting.
So because we were all surprised when she said 98% is not used, it's used for research, and we were like, wow.
98% of a person who's donated
98% of the donations to those procurement companies. She said only 2% were actually transplanted. The other are all sent off for research.
I'd have to understand what she means by that, and I'd love to have one of the organ procurement CEOs on here to discuss and let us know exactly what that means. And maybe in the next meeting we ask one of them to give us more discussion about that, so we understand what that is, because I think that's where the information really is. And let's ask those questions to make sure we understand and know.
I don't see her on the call. Maybe Chair Fulton, maybe we can ask her to come to the next advisory committee meeting and educate us about that.
Yeah, we can reach out to her and try to have her on the meeting next week.
Okay.
There's another, I would ask one of the organ procurement organizations to be on there too, representing themselves to make sure we hear from them.
I think she represents the organ procurement organizations. At least that was represented to me.
Okay.
Yeah, she said multiple. She represented multiple, and that's where the number come from. That's why we were very surprised at that number.
Sure. Yeah, as long as we clearly define what that statement means. I don't have an organ procurement organization. I don't have any stake in this. I'm just saying I know what they do as a clinician, and I know that the work that they do on a daily basis ends up in my operating room and we use it. I just want to make sure that we don't slow that down or stop it with people that are actually taking care of patients on a daily basis versus us training and learning from anatomical specimens.
Oh, I'm saying if it says donation on my death certificate, nothing else bothers me.
Right.
I'm just worried about the stuff that's donated.
Okay, we're ready to move on.
I think 2062 is our next item.
Yep.
Let me see if I can share.
And Commissioner Carnes, I want to be respectful of your time before we start a whole new section. I know you came here to talk about transportation. Do you have another obligation that before we start a new section, or do you want us to keep going where we're going? And this is informative for us too, because we're trying to, obviously we're going to vote on this in August. So you tell us. I want to be respectful of your time.
Well, I'm getting ready to bug out. I have to go to a funeral, a family member, but I'm going to log back in as we drive there. It's about a 2-hour drive. So I'll be online. And I think if you allow public comments, I think Mr. Baker will also comment. He'll raise his hand. He's going to log in to this meeting at that point also.
Okay. So just keep going? Or do you want to?
Yeah, no, you go ahead and keep going.
I would say I'm okay with moving on to 6 and coming back to 5 if we need to.
It's your preference, Commissioner Carnes.
Sure, let's do it.
Ultimately, all of this is for the benefit of the commission. So
Sounds like we want to.
do you want to talk transportation right now, or do you want to keep going?
We can talk transportation right now.
Let's do it. Let me bring up my screen again. I'll go to the transportation if you give me 1 second. I believe it's in 2064. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. And this is going off Dr. Gilbert's comments, but it may cover it. So there's stakeholders. It said there was 5 stakeholders that were involved in giving information about this. This is referring to a lot of Dr. Gilbert's statements. And he wanted to distinguish out-of-state donor giving to a Texas program from a transfer of a body from an out-of-state entity to Texas. These are 2 different things, and suggests defining out-of-state donor while leaving importation, exportation intact.
I actually think what Commissioner Carnes was talking about, and this was the purpose for that agenda item, was talking about how we regulate the custody of the body from the common carrier to the facility.
Okay.
Right. And I don't want to put words in your mouth, Commissioner Carnes, but we had some discussion at the commission meeting about human remains being left on a loading dock after the common carrier takes it off the airplane, and making sure that this is not left unattended, and that we have responsible people that are, I guess, cognizant of the gravity of the remains that they are transporting.
Commissioner Opiola, I think is that in definitions, that section of common carriers when we spoke about that?
I'm not certain that we really even address it in maybe what we're asking is this advisory committee and this is a problem not just, I think, in the anatomical world, but potentially in the funeral world as well, that we might need a separate rule. That's what I'm thinking on transport of human remains, a general rule that goes in another section. This is beginning that discussion. So, Commissioner Carnes, why don't you talk about your concerns?
Well, you pretty much touched on it. I agree. Even in the funeral industry, it's kind of clear, it's kind of not clear. And when it talks about a first call of a dead human remain, that it's got to come through a licensed funeral director. But I do believe on donations, there are some entities in schools that kind of do it themselves. And what we've run into, but that I've been made aware of, are some entities are not filing the death certificate. And then by not filing that death certificate in a timely manner, there's fraud, mainly with Social Security payments and other payments. So I'm not trying to create business for myself. Just so you know, I want to make that clear up front. The entities that I deal with, we do file the death certificates for them to make sure that it's done in accordance with the funeral law, and it is done in a timely manner to cut out all of that fraud. But it's been brought to my attention that there are other entities that accept donations directly that may not follow up. They may not do it in a timely manner. So that's one thing. And then there's transportation. Commissioner Brown, I don't want to speak for him, but he was mentioning in our last meeting that when it comes to donation for certain medical schools or down in the valley, as he stated, you don't know what's going to show up. It's not necessarily, it's not a licensed transportation agent. It's not a licensed funeral home. And his comment was, it's usually a guy that shows up with a t-shirt with a naked woman on it. And I think this leads to issues if we do not address that as far as who is transporting deceased in the funeral industry and body donation.
because the way it is right now on the funeral side too, anybody can have a transport company.
Exactly.
That's where we need to change some regulations on the funeral side and make them have to be some kind of permitted, licensed, or something for transport. Because, yeah,
I mean, you're talking about people, unfortunately, even in the funeral home business, but they may have no insurance whatsoever.
yeah,
You're not required to, which I find crazy. So I may be getting a little too deep there, but yeah, anybody can transport a deceased or body part or anything.
yep.
And who holds them accountable if they're not licensed?
Commissioner Carnes, if I can address part of this. So as a person donates their body to science, and I'm going to take the funeral home and funeral directors out of this for just a sec, but look at the anatomical side. If someone says, I'm donating my body to science, and that's their final disposition, that body now falls under the commission's purview, but is considered by Texas Administrative Code anatomical material, not to be disrespectful of those that donate, but that's what it's considered. Now, what we're discussing is who's picking that tissue or that anatomical specimen up and who's delivering it, right? There's bad actors, and then there's the ones that do it properly, right? And so do we go and start setting up a whole entire licensing and certification status for those people, which would also go across the funeral homes, I would imagine. Then you could say, you guys need to follow this rule. Or is it on the onus of the transport group and the entity receiving, right? So the people who may deliver to us, whether it's a funeral director or an organized transportation group, a private group, right, that follows the rules, they sign off on a vendor agreement. They know all the laws of 2040, 691, and 692. They know how to label the boxes. They know that they have to have a chain of custody. They sign off on a chain of custody. They follow the rules in essence, right? So those are the ones we want to promote and say, you're doing it the right way, continue. It's the ones that don't do any of that, right? They just put whatever in the back, show up however dressed they want to, all those kind of things. So is it more of the Will Body programs, NATOs, and anatomical facilities need to make sure that they use a proper transportation organization or a licensed and certified one, right? Because if we go to the licensed and certified, or maybe they registered with the funeral commission, maybe the ones that want to transport is another definition we throw in our definitions of, authorized transportation group, right? And then that could be defined in our glossary of is an entity that's registered with the state. I have ABC transportation organization. I've registered with the funeral commission. I understand the rules, the laws of how you're supposed to treat the body, the chain of custody paperwork, the consent paperwork. I have all that. I have a bill of lading in essence in my vehicle. So if I get pulled over, I would love that. I think that would be great. But that would allow anybody who's appropriate, correct, doing it right to register and sign up for this, versus the ones that don't want to, then you're not supposed to use them, right? So I don't know if that makes sense, sir, as to, do you start getting them licensed? Do you start getting them to register? Or do you just say, hey, it's on the onus of the organization, the Will Body program, the NATO, the anatomical facilities, to make sure that their vendor agreement is solid? Both groups have signed off and understand the rules and regulations involved in anatomical specimens being donated.
Well, I'd like to say, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry, Commissioner Carnes. I was just going to ask Commissioner Opiola, would you happen to have, I apologize, I've been scanning while we've been talking. Could you bring up that specific section that says funeral home or so that we can have that on our screen? And
yeah, so
I'll let Commissioner Carnes continue with your statement, and because I know your time's
This is a statute. It says the commission shall adopt rules to ensure that each body or anatomical specimen received or distributed under this chapter is properly transported. So we definitely have the authority to regulate this under the anatomical side, and then on the non-anatomical side, on the occupations code, it actually says that a funeral establishment means a place of business used in the care and preparation for burial or transportation of a dead human body. And so on the funeral side, any transport business is a funeral establishment. So we got both sides. We have the statutory authority to do this. I don't know that we have. And so, well, I know we haven't. And so that's why this is an agenda item for discussion. Is that what you were looking for, the statutory authority?
Yes, sir. And also we have it in one of our rules. It's the last statement in one of our rules that we've just been recently going through, because it also adds common carrier on that particular rule. And I apologize, I can't name the number on it right at the moment.
Yeah, it's either 206.4 or 206.5. Give me 1 second.
And I agree with both Commissioner Carnes and Dr. Ali as far as onus, but we also know that onus sometimes doesn't meet at times. I can only speak of myself and how I always viewed it as a director of a program. I would not contract to anyone that was not a licensed commercial embalming facility or funeral home establishment, or my personnel for the institute were the ones that did all of the transporting for me, whether it was within the state of Texas or outside the state of Texas. And if it was necessary to contract to a fourth party beyond my third party, or then we only use licensed entities at that point as well, to ensure that the driver or that person that was representing us on that end was cycled back to someone who's going to take onus for their business. Where the common carrier aspect where we run into from sometimes is that we have courier services. They offer a great service for a great price. Well, you kind of get what you pay for from time to time. And we have individuals that don't understand DOT regulations in reference to biologicals, et cetera. They may not carry proper even insurance on the vehicle that they're using. It's almost, I can say from personal experience that I have seen individuals with DoorDash that were more professionally dressed and equipped delivering stuff to people's homes than I have that have dropped off anatomical specimens before. So the point that we're getting to is that, yes, I feel like that we do need to put in some parameters so that we can say this is the right side of the highway, this is the left side of the highway, you work in between and don't get off of it, so that we can professionally represent not only the providing and receiving organizations properly, but also those that we have been entrusted with their family members and loved ones, to know that it's professional down the line on both the funeral home side and the anatomical side. As far as common carrier, I know that carries a big wide. Somebody's going to say, well, what about if we need to fly a body from one state to another? Yes, that is a common carrier, but that is a air freight. I would think that we need to be more tight on our regulations and representing how things are going down our highway systems in Texas and in the United States, and that should be with someone who holds some sort of professional license in death care or is directly related to anatomical services. And we put those standards out there. And that's just my opinion. It always has been, because there have been those gaps on both sides, anatomically and funeral home, that I do not feel that professionalism was the top priority. It was just A to B.
I agree that I understand what you're saying, Dr. Ali. I've seen so many different experiences where people hire their family member to transport long distance of specimens just because they got a stretcher and threw it in a van. And then I've seen other places where they've been delivered in cars that had no AC, inspection was out, registration was out, unprofessional, and threw them out on the dock. And I've warned these people, and they're like, well, we're not control over that. They're contract. I'm like, yeah, but it's a PR nightmare for everybody. I said, all it takes is one picture of that and you're going to have a whole thing over again. So, I'm all for it. I'd rather have somebody, that's, because I've seen it way too much unprofessionalism, and anybody can grab a cot and throw it in the station wagon and say, I'm a mortuary service now, I can make removals anywhere. And you got a lot of those in these big cities that do it because they undercut. You know, a lot of these graduates graduate school, Commonwealth or the funeral industry, and get a cot and start out early as a mortuary removal service, and undercut a lot of different people. You know, our contract, we required $1 million insurance policy on anything with doing with us, our transportation and everything. A lot of these people, they don't have no insurance on any contracts or anything like that. So it's a necessity that we're going to need, or it's going to be a PR nightmare down the road.
Commissioner Carnes, I think you were trying to say something, sir.
Oh, I think they said it well for me. So, yeah, I think they pretty much said, you know, the way I feel also. It can be a PR nightmare for us. I think the more we can tighten it up, the better for everybody.
Yeah, it's not just PR, guys. This is just respect for the human body, right? For the person who has left this earth and their remains that are behind. And I don't care about public relations. I just think it's part of the respect for the human dignity of the human race, you know, that we do this. Another concern I have is if we have people that are transporting human bodies and sheriff's department goes and pulls them over for speeding even, and they find 6 or 7 bodies, how does the sheriff know whether this is a result of a crime or this is a legitimate transport? You know, they don't know that, right?
Well, they have all the proper paperwork that transfers with the specimen.
Well, yes, but
I mean,
I would like to know that is someone who is registered with the commission to do that, so that there is some accountability for that.
So what we need to do is add in with this under our transportation, where we talk about being common carrier and funeral homes and stuff. Have one in there as a registered transport company, and then we need to have a way that they can register with the commission.
Yeah, and I love that. I think these organizations should be registered with the funeral commission. I think the licensing and all that, I think that's a little too excessive. That gets into a whole nother world. I want to make sure that it's not only funeral homes or an ambulance that can move us around, and the common carriers. If I don't even know what common carriers is defined at exactly, is it FedEx and UPS, or is it American Airlines? Is it, you know, a professional transportation organization? You know, so I want to make sure that if it's going to be funeral homes or funeral directors, an ambulance, or a carrier that is registered with the funeral commission, I think that's fantastic, and I think that keeps these people that should never be touching a body, period, in there. And I would love for the transportation organization to have that paperwork to show the police officer, I'm a registered transportation organization with the funeral commission. I have my consents and paperwork for the 6 bodies in the back. That right there should be very dignified, respectful, and appropriate, and clear everybody, right? But you're right. The guy showing up with an AC/DC shirt on and cut off shorts, delivering a body and just dropping it off on the deck should not be approved by the funeral commission. But then again, if someone like that applies, how is the funeral commission going to know that professionally these aren't the most professional people in the world? Well, what you do is the anatomical facility or the will body program or NATO files a complaint, and then you snuff those people out and make sure they're not in this transportation world. Exactly. But I would say allow private organizations to transport as long as they're registered and they know the laws and they've signed off, just like an anatomical facility has to be inspected per se. Here are the rules, here's the laws, here's what you're doing. And here's the appropriate way to complain about an organization that's transporting that doesn't do it right.
No, you know, all these mortuary services are the only ones that are not regulated. The funeral homes are regulated, will body programs, everybody else is regulated except for the actual transport companies of, you know, these fly-by nights. Yeah, so that's a loophole that, you know, they're getting away. If they have an accident with a body in it, like Dr. OPS says, or Mr. They don't have insurance, they don't have enough to cover it, because there's going to be a nightmare when that happens. I mean, so they're the only people that are not regulated by the commission at all, is these mortuary services that are fly-by-night.
But hang on, you're using the wrong term. It's not mortuary services, it's transport companies.
Transport,
mortuary services are regulated.
Yeah, I'm sorry. You know what I mean. Sorry. Yeah.
So don't use that term.
So,
transport companies that need to be registered.
when we make these kind of proposed rules, Mr. Fulton, I want to make sure to put myself in the shoes of a transportation organization, right? So let's say I have a very legitimate transportation organization. This is all I do. I pick up a body at El Paso and drive it all the way to Brownsville,
Yep.
right? Those are long runs that funeral homes may not want to do, maybe cost prohibitive, an ambulance, those kind of things. So put yourselves in their shoes. So now we've asked them, hey, you need to register with the funeral commission. Okay, what does the registration look like? What's the paperwork look like? Am I being charged for this registration? Are you going to charge me $500 to register? Or do I just register to say that I understand the laws, I understand the rules, here are my checklists, this is how I transport, I've got to have this a fixed label. These are the paperwork I have to have in my car or vehicle when I move them. Climate, I can't have them in a non-AC sitting in the back decomposing. I need to have climate control versus saying what the temperature needs to be. Like those are the things that I think we need to think of to make sure that the legitimate people can do this. And then the illegitimate people, the people that don't do it with dignity and respect, are filtered out, right? And then I think it's on us as the organizations to say, hey, this guy showed up, just do it on the dock, didn't follow any of the chain of custody, didn't follow any of the rules. Then you complain to the funeral commission, and the funeral commission yanks their registration.
And so I think they have to be registered. Now we need to determine what is required to be registered.
I don't know that transport companies are authorized under law, current law right now. I think it has to be a mortuary service or a funeral home that the commission can authorize and inspect. Maybe I'm wrong, but that's what I'm thinking.
So under the statute right now, they are a funeral establishment. I just showed that to you guys. So under the funeral side of things, they would be a funeral establishment because they meet that definition of funeral establishment under 651. Let me share this with you.
Well, I know in the past, all these transport companies have been working under the direction of a funeral director. It's been a gray area that everybody's exploited on that. And they said the direction under a funeral director is a phone call away is what all these transport companies used in the past. Because transport companies can only work for a funeral home. They can't work with the public. So that's in the past how they were getting away with it. I mean, so am I wrong on that?
Yeah, the place of business used in preparation for burial or transportation of a human body. I guess you could interpret that two different ways, right?
Because Chairman Opiella is not necessarily a funeral establishment either, because a commercial embalming establishment transports too, and they're not a funeral establishment.
That's a different section of the code.
Yeah.
This one just deals with the funeral establishment. The embalming is in a totally separate section of the code. In the
another is that DOT and OSHA regulate medical couriers. So the companies that provide, let's just say, LabCorp, those type of people, they have to follow have regulations and certifications that they have to follow. So in my mind, this isn't any different than what we are asked, that has been asked in the medical field as well, is that if you are a medical carrier and are going to be transporting biologics, you have to follow XYZ standards. We could mirror that. We could require registration. And I say we even have a fee for it, because if you want to come in and do this, then you have to be registered so that we have you in there as that you're transporting people. But if you're a licensed establishment already, then you're already in there.
You're already covered.
But if you're wanting to come in as an independent, you need to have some sort of certification or licensure in some aspect.
And you can't
so there's two ways that we have to address this. They're under two separate codes, right? When it pertains to anatomical, and perhaps the commission can have a separate and copy this language that you guys come up with, right? For 651, which is the occupations code. But under 691, we shall adopt rules to ensure that the specimen or body is properly transported. So I think we need to focus on what those standards are here, and then the commission will take that up on the funeral side as well. Because I don't, y'all are separate from the funeral side, and there's a carve out for you guys. Y'all are not a funeral establishment, right? But y'all are regulated under 691.
So Opal, I want to make sure that as we go down this algorithm that the Texas Administrative Code clearly says once you've donated your body to science, it's an anatomical specimen, it's a biological specimen, it is not a dead human body. And that's funeral home, like you said, the whole funeral home side of this whole entire thing. But when we're talking about the anatomical side, I get that in 691 it says properly transported, but it does not say by a funeral establishment. It does not say.
It doesn't. It doesn't. Right. That's what I said. We can't. We have to do these things separately.
Correct. Right. And so
you guys handle the anatomical side. That's what you're advising us for. We're going to develop rules in this committee to deal with the anatomical side of things, and then perhaps the commission deals with that separately on the funeral non-anatomical side.
I think that's what I want to caution us is that we need to look at this from the anatomical perspective of how this is being transported, not from the funeral directors or funeral home or mortuary science, those kind of things. This is our goal here is how do you transport anatomical specimens with dignity and respect and following the laws of how they're supposed to mark their bag, box, how it's transported, the consent paperwork, those kind of things. That's our goal. Our goal is not to create new rules that have nothing to do with anatomical specimens that have to do more with funeral homes and funeral final dispositions of burial and cremation and the other things versus donation to science. So wherever we go with this, there's a lot of transportation that occurs in the anatomical specimen world. We want to make sure that if our goal is dignity and respect and follow the rules of how you mark the bag, the box, how it's transported, paperwork, consent and all that, let's make sure we stick to that we don't start saying only these people can transport. And if it's to be a person that transports in this world, you need to register yourself at least with the funeral commission in the anatomical side of the house and follow the anatomical side proposed rules. And that's perfect. That's what we want. But I don't want to start leaking into funeral rules and funeral home rules and funeral director rules and only they can pick up and only they can receive and only they can move around because that's not what we're doing.
I mean, if you look at A on 206.4, can y'all see the screen?
Yes.
Okay. It allows you to do it by a secured vehicle, appropriate secured vehicle, by a funeral establishment, by an ambulance service, by a will body program, NATO or anatomical facility. So you can transport it yourself as a registered, entity, a search organization or common carrier. And I'm the framework that I'm developing here for our discussion is or other transportation company registered with the commission. And then under this anatomical rule, you would have registration of a commercial transportation company. A commercial transportation company transporting a body or anatomical specimen other than a common carrier, because we don't want to make Southwest Airlines register with the with the commission, must be registered with the commission. And then we would have the standards that we would come up with to do that.
I fully agree with that and endorse that. I think that's perfect.
So what do you know? What do you want to put up?
Are you good with this, Mr. Carnes?
Jay?
Yeah. Generally, yes, as long as we specify what that is.
Yeah, then we need to specify that they have to register with the commission, and then we want to specify how they have to have it labeled and have paperwork with them and all that.
Yeah, I think us trying to cram that in this moment may be kind of tough. I think if we come back for the next committee meeting and say, here are the requirements for registration for a transportation organization, that may come out better, where we can all have a little time to figure out, what's the pathway look like from the pickup, paperwork, to transporting, to delivery, to chain of custody paperwork. Like, let's make sure there's a nice algorithm here for them.
So why don't we do this? Let's do a work group on this of Dr. Ali, Jason, and myself. Well, not me, because I've got to go out of town. So but Dr. Ali and Jason and one of the NATOs on here, and everybody come up with what paperwork and everything we want with it. Does that work?
That's fine for me.
So who's your other person that you have on there?
Jason,
Charlie, I'll be in the well body program.
Jason
he's
Jones.
represented.
Why don't we
And-
pick a NATO like maybe Mike Houston, who
That's what I was going to say.
science guy?
Jason
They do a
Jones,
lot
Mike
of.
Houston, Dr.
yeah.
Ali.
They probably do a lot of transportation.
let me see if I could suggest Jason Owens. Would you mind being on this? Because I know that Mary and Genesis do a lot of their own transporting as well. And have
Perhaps Mike and myself, because we do a lot of our own transportation. And then I'm not putting words in your mouth, Mike, but I understand that Science Care does a lot of transportation, via, Southwest or Delta, etc. So we kind of do it different ways.
Okay, because I can only have 3 people on the committee
You
Have
can
four.
or on the work group. So
I suggest you pick one NATO, one anatomical facility, one wheel body program. That way, everybody transports a little differently, but you can get everybody's.
So
Jason, I can do it.
Okay.
we'll have Mike Houston, and then put Kurt as
well body.
as Will Body, and then Dr. Ali as a facility.
Perfect.
Okay.
And we'll get something out to the group prior to our meeting. We'll give it to Ms. Haynes, and then Ms. Haynes can distribute to you guys, so it doesn't break the form.
Okay. And I encourage y'all to reach out to Commissioner Carnes and seek his input on it as well. So,
Yes, sir.
I just want to make sure, do we have the statutory authority to create a new division or a new transportation company licensing? Do we have that authority?
the rule, it says by rule, we have, let me show that back up to you. It's very broad. It says,
And it's the anatomical side doing this, not the funeral side.
correct, under 691. Let me get back up to share.
And it's registration, not licensing too.
Yeah, it's not licensing. We don't, under the anatomical side, we don't, perhaps the legislature will let us license people next session, but until then, it's just registration. And it says the commission shall adopt rules to ensure that each body or anatomical specimen received or distributed under this chapter is properly transported. It says the commission may employ a public carrier to transport bodies or anatomical specimens received or distributed by the commission. And then it says each body or transport anatomical specimen should carefully deposited and transported with the least possible public display. So within this, to ensure that they're being properly transported, I think this gives us the authority by rule to ensure that the persons doing those are operating within the rules of the commission. And the only way that you can bring them within the purview of the commission would be to have them registered with us. So I think so. We can. Our staff attorney has stepped out to do some other tasks, but we can have a discussion at the commission about this. And but I see under 691.031 that by rule we can develop any procedures we need to ensure that they are properly transported. I mean, we could make the will body program or NATO personally transport them. I think that's a little ridiculous, but I mean that they're registered with the commission.
Yeah.
But in any event, this is part and parcel of that, in my opinion.
So let's let this committee do their thing, and let's come back next meeting and see if we can't put something better together.
Okay.
And I apologize, I had some technical issues. Could we repeat who we created for this work group, please?
It is Kurt, Mike, and Ali.
Okay,
Aaron.
thank you.
Got it.
Okay.
That way you can get on your way, Commissioner Carnes, for your funeral. Okay. Do y'all want to pop back? Do y'all, since this is 4, Rule 4. Do y'all want to pop back to 2? Because doesn't look like we're going to be able to do anything on 4 until we figure that out.
Yeah.
Sure.
Okay.
I will grab the screen real quick and throw up what I have from some of the stakeholder
Yeah, you go ahead.
information. And here is Rule 4.
No, will this be Rule 2?
I'm sorry, 2. It is 2. I just said the wrong word. So there was 4 stakeholders that put comments into 206.2. Dr. Gilbert liked what we had about the higher education program list. ICE tissue bank carve out versus transport a small sample tissue. I think we discussed this about. Just reading this. Yeah, about gross specimens and microscopic versus IRB approved. So I think we've already done C15 there.
That covers that.
Yep. C25, he had no problem with disarticulation and segmentation road. That wasn't an issue. Here's one part that I think he brought up, and I think it's important. My understanding has always been, and this is the only way we do our business, is if a body is donated to science, you will only receive ashes back, or the ashes will be per law scattered in a remembrance garden. But never do we send human remains, as in tissue, back to the family.
Yeah.
And
Yes,
I think
our program has. We've done
Okay.
direct burials because we've had Orthodox Jew, religious reason, they couldn't be cremated. So we have direct with the funeral home that they understand that it can only be a direct burial, no viewing or anything like that.
Okay. I don't have a problem with that if it's done appropriately and correctly, because we've had some families ask, can we have the body back? We want to see the body. And I'm thinking, my goodness, no.
Yeah.
But yes, direct burial where there's no viewing. Do we need to specify that exactly in here to let people know that no, you can't just send it back to the family's local funeral home and have a viewing and all that? How do you guys want to go with that?
You could put direct in there, it would take it out, where they wouldn't have that, because a direct burial, every funeral home knows that, it's straight, no viewing and direct into. Because it's a religious, I seen where Gilbert wanted to take that out, but for a religious reason, that's going to neglect them wanting to donate for that reason. And I don't want to stop anybody from donating.
Does anybody else from the committee have an
Charlie,
issue with
Jason?
direct?
I would agree. I would say direct burial, no viewing, or ID viewing, anything like that, because you don't want to say public viewing, because they'll take that as an ID viewing where it's family only. But I would say, or direct burial, under the direction of licensed.
So this responsibility is on the NATO Will Body Program anatomic facility with the funeral home, correct? The family, in essence, this is something they've consented at the beginning that if you wish to have any of the remains returned, the only way we can return it is to a direct burial, and define direct burial on your consent to make sure that family understands, no, you can't pop the bag open or the box open to take a look. And the funeral homes need to understand that. So I think this is part of the consent paperwork, because there is a part on disposition. It's not final disposition. It's the what we do at the end when the material is used. If it's going to be sent back to a funeral home for a direct burial, that the funeral home, the anatomical facility, and the family have understood, and it's part of the consent, that if that box is checked, that they understand there is no viewing.
And you also would want to put on there, and any cost incurred in that with the funeral home will be on the family.
Exactly. And that's part of that is part of the consent, saying that any costs on transportation, burial, that is from the donor's family.
They're not going to do a direct burial for free.
Correct.
So does that need to be something we put in our rules, or does that need to be something we say needs to be in your consent? Does that need to have a whole rule for it?
I would think the consent.
Yeah.
I mean, we have
Agreed.
C27. It's a part of our proposed rule. We can easily add a sentence in there saying, if direct burial is
Any additional expenses incurred is responsibility of the family.
If the family or the donor has requested direct burial, ABCD, this is what this means, as defined as a direct burial. All costs must be incurred by the family. And the funeral home will, whatever it is, if we need to have that exact sentence or lines in there, then let's do it to make sure it's clear.
Dr. Ali, I'm confused. C27 under which particular rule? Because I don't see a C27 in point 2.
I apologize. This might be from one of the older versions, and that's what Dr. Gilbert saw instead of the one you have, but it has to do with return of remains to family for burial section, sir, and it may be completely different than what I have.
Okay. I'm having a hard time locating it. That's the only reason.
It's under disposition,
That's on
Chair Opiella. In the graph, under disposition, he's got a note. It says cremation with remains, or return of cremated remains, burial.
That's in a different rule. Okay, hold on. That one is under under 14, I think. Rule 206.14.
Oh, okay.
That's the disposition of the body and disposition of remains, right? Is that the one y'all are talking about?
206.2.
Okay.
Is there a section under 206.2? And I apologize if some of this got cross-referenced the wrong way.
There's a graph that has activity categories.
Yes.
One of them is disposition.
Got it. Okay. Documentation. There we go. Okay. Cremation with return of cremated. In that other rule, we go more specifically into that cremation with remain. Here, let me just show it on the screen. It didn't have a number attached to it, so that's the reason why. Okay. So what change are y'all suggesting here? I actually think that where this is more appropriately addressed is in 206.14.
Yeah, if that's the better proposed rule to work it on, then let's do it there versus trying to add a direct burial definition here.
Yeah, because well, I'll get it out in a minute. The disposition definition here, I think, works well with disposition of derived specimen consistent with donor consent. That way, it leaves it up to the receiving entity, whether it's a will body program or a NATO, to have that in their consent forms. It's not stating that burial is an option for everyone, because not all programs may or may not want to enter into that. So we need to be sure that we define those separately when we go over to our disposition, to where it doesn't seem it's one and the same, that you have a choice of cremation or direct burial, that it's dependent on what program. Because, like, for instance, Incarnate Word down in San Antonio, anyone who donates to their program, specifically in their donor consent forms, they sign off on that there is not any return of any remains.
Yeah.
That's Mary's stance. Well, we wouldn't entertain doing a burial.
Yeah.
Same with us. We will not accept a donation if they don't allow a cremation.
Yep.
Right.
Okay.
And it's that 1% or 0.5% out there that you're going to run across that. It's not a large percentage.
So once again, the question is, does it need to be in the proposed rule, or does it just need to be in your consent that if an organization has people who want to have it returned back, does our rule prohibit you from doing a direct burial?
No, it doesn't. As it's written in our definition, also gives a flexibility too.
Right. Chair Opeel, is that correct? Does the rule prohibit an organization doing a direct burial? Does it say you cannot?
I don't see where it says you cannot. It says it in the authorized activities that burial is one of the authorized activities under 2. And then under 14, you have on the screen, once the donor body or anatomical specimen will no longer be used by an authorized entity. And then it says authorized entity is to bury, incinerate, or cremate the body in compliance with occupations code. So that's an option. Burial is an option.
So there you go. I think that takes care of that. And then it's just the suggestion should be to the entities is make sure on your consent that you have that checked off, that you are going to do a direct burial, and that is on you and the family and the funeral home, and where the costs are incurred and stuff, versus putting it in our actual proposed rules.
And I want to say that option is only available to the NATO or the Will Body program, not a end-use anatomical facility. We don't. That's handled under one. Remember, we separated those two out. The anatomical facilities, which are those that are prohibited from receiving them directly, right? We don't want those people burying remains. They have to either return it to the NATO or the anatomical, the Will Body program, or follow the cremation. You know, y'all put that in there last time.
Right.
So is there any changes need to be made?
I think we're good.
Doesn't
I think we're
sound
good
like
on
it.
that.
No, not that we look at it. Okay, so that takes care of that part of it for 2. And then there was just some cross-referencing that I want to make sure is correct. So let me share my screen again. This is more administrative on it. It may be because I may have had the older version, but right here on the citation flag, and this might be in a different rule. It just came up on here because the 206 popped up. So those are 2 things that I'll share this document with you so you can look at those 2.
I think we fixed that. We actually caught that 54. I remember that was one of the things that was caught by the governor's office when they were reviewing it.
Okay. And then did we do this one too, this cross-reference?
That one might not have been confirmed in the cross-reference in 2. Okay. 1 second. I'll open that up. Give me that cross-reference again. Be Rule 15.
Mm-hmm.
Yes. It's this section supersedes the abuse of corpse provisions in 22 TAC 206.15, and that's where we put the abuse of corpse provision. That's the SAC rule that we have not actually. Hold on, did we repeal that rule? Make sure. No, it's still there.
Okay.
And maybe y'all want to make some changes to that 206.15 as well, but that remains in the administrative code. That's the old SAC abuse of corpse rule. Hold on 1 second. Secretary of State's website is running slow for me. And while we're waiting here, I want to kind of talk to you about the schedule with this while I'm waiting for this to load. One of the things that we had some complaints from some of the commissioners, and that was very well taken because we've been moving very quickly to get things done that should have been done 3 years ago. That, you know, they wanted more time to review the proposals. So one of the things that I'm seeking from you guys is that we 206 that we kind of finalize your report for the next meeting. We're going to do the next meeting on the 14th of August, I believe. Maria? I believe that's
4th.
It was going to be on the 4th. Unfortunately, we had to push it back to the 14th because of the late publication of the set of rules. So, you know, some of the rules will not get published in Friday's Texas Register. As I said at the beginning of the meeting, that there will be some of the rules will be published in the July 10th Texas Register. We have to have a 30-day comment period, and so that's necessitated us moving that back a week for the commission meeting. So just, but bottom line, the commissioners really wanted to have y'all's work done not less than 15 days before the meeting. So we have this meeting, we have next week's meeting, and then we have one more meeting after that. That would be the 15th or 16th, I think.
No, it's the 22nd. I'm out of town on the 15th, remember?
Oh, so y'all are not meeting on the 15th?
Nope.
Okay.
I'll be in Tampa. So we can
still meet if
next
Charlotte
time after
can't
the
be
8th,
there.
we can meet on the 22nd.
Okay. Okay, yeah, since that's let's see.
That's over 2
That'll
weeks.
be okay. The 22nd. Let's have our goal be the 22nd for getting everything knocked out. Okay. 206.15 is still in the rule. We have not proposed repealing it, and so that reference is correct.
Okay.
If there's not any other feedback on 206.4, I was going to move to 206.5.
We're on 206.2.
You mean 206.2, right? You were on 206.2.
I'm sorry. I apologize. Yeah.
Okay.
If there's not any other comments or discussion
You
points.
had no comments on chain of custody? I thought we had a discussion earlier on chain of custody, 206.3. We didn't talk about it, but when we were talking about definitions, there was a comment that was made to fix something in the chain of custody form. Am I imagining that? I thought somebody had mentioned that.
Not during today's meeting, but it may have come up, and I don't recall.
Okay, never mind. Never mind. Okay. So no comments on 206.3.
No, I think the chain of custody was still actually kind of being reviewed, and then we were going to review the overall because it had been tabled, and I don't think we brought it back up.
Okay. Sorry, it's been a little bit of a meeting, so I had misremembering. So 206.5, you want to?
Yes, sir. This is just once again stakeholder comments of what they saw in 206.5, and I apologize if the nomenclature in C1, those things don't go exactly, but we may have discussed some of this. This was actually endorsed by the stakeholders. They understood that the flow is a will body program where NATO receives, and then the transfer occurs from them to the anatomical facilities that are not part of the will body program or NATO. We're doing a 1 year retention of return for disposition. The word final shouldn't be on here.
We don't have that in the rule right now. 1 year return.
Do we have any time frame on when a anatomical specimen should be cremated and returned, or do we leave that open on purpose?
I'm looking at rule 206.5, and I don't see, it just talks about transfer of bodies or anatomical specimens.
Okay.
Application, and then the approval. There is nothing.
6.5D has nothing of that.
If we did include it,
Yeah.
if we ever did put a time frame in there, it would need to be, it couldn't be 12 months. It would have to be at least 14 minimally. Because
my program,
a course can run 12 months, and then you have to have some logistics time for the back and forth of the transfer. So
my program would have to be 24 months.
Right. Well, once again, I think that should be a consent-driven thing, not a proposed rule.
Yeah.
And on this 206.5, they scratched the D out anyhow.
Yeah, we struck D was in the SAB rule, I believe. That's what he's referring to, and we struck that. So this is what's being published in the register.
Okay, and that's why it shows endorsed as in.
As far as a time frame, Maria would have to verify. At one point in time on the request forms, it stated 14 months on the request forms that individuals fill out and submit. That from time of delivery to return, it had to be within 14 months.
Where is that stated?
On the commission's request form that you have to submit to them for receiving anatomical specimens. At one point in time, it was on one of the documents. It said 14 months. It couldn't be longer than 14 months, I believe, was this statement that was on there.
That
I
wasn't
think we
a
should,
rule.
I think we should change that because I think that should be something that's on the consent between the donor and the receiving entity, and not the funeral commission saying you need to get this done by 14 months. Because what if part of the tissue is held longer than 14 months?
Yeah, you could have an extended research project.
Right.
We do
So
too.
once again, I think something like that should be more in your consent, where the donor says, "I understand it may take 2 years or 3 years." It's an open thing that you and the donor have to agree upon, versus the state telling you have to get it back in 14 months.
I think we agree.
I didn't have anything else on those. Of this, and I went specifically to the stakeholder comments to address their comments to see if it, if we all agree or disagree with the things we've come to. Charlie, what I would recommend is for the next meeting, 206-14, 206-15, 206-3 with chain of custody, that we tackle those and make sure that there's not any other stakeholder input on those three. And that it seems like, Chair Opio, that would cover all the proposed rules
Okay.
on getting our final feedback.
Is that good?
And all I ask is, Maria, if you could send all these edited changes that we did today back to us, all the rules, not just the ones we worked on today, but I think we went all the way up to there's like 12 of them, or however many proposed rules we get. So everybody has the final package that we have gotten to today. So then we can look at it, distribute it out, some of our stakeholders, get any other feedback. So next week we can tackle those other three proposed rules, and then anything else that pops up, so we can give you some final recommendations by our July 22nd deadline.
Sounds good. Yeah.
And I know we bounced from it from whenever Commissioner Carnes left, but 26.04, the ones that Maria sent to us, and I apologize, folks, I'm having some technical difficulties on this end.
Right.
Down at the bottom, that has to do with importation and exportation. I believe if I'm on the right one.
You're at 206.4, Jason?
I think that's the correct one, but I'm having difficulty bringing it up. Down towards the bottom of that, there was a strikeout with Chairman Opiella had put an edit in there, and it was in red on the ones that we received from Maria. And two of the, I guess you could say, topic lines. One was, I believe, importation and exportation.
I'm sorry, Jason, what was that rule again?
206.4, he's looking at
14.
C and D.
14.
206.4, C and D.
Four. 4. Okay, got it. That way I can pull it up for you guys.
Yeah, and I apologize. I don't know what's going on with my service on this end. I was just going to make a point in there. There was a red highlighted edit that I believe Commissioner Opiella had added on.
You got to scroll up a little bit.
You'll have to scroll up a little more.
Oh, I need to address that part he was at.
The only part I added was the commercial transportation. This is what we were talking about. And
Okay,
what
so
during the commission meeting, go ahead.
If you continue to the bottom of this document, we get to two title point or
This one right here.
It's up a little bit more. You're going for the importation and the exportation. It's at C and D. Go up a little bit higher. OPL, it's right there. D and E. It's D and E on this one.
Yeah, because we're changing it. Go ahead.
This line 1, because we just got into that conversation earlier, is donation to tissue banks authorized. You had originally highlighted. You're right there.
It still says we did not change that. That's still the original SAB rule.
Based on 692A,
Mhm.
I do have a comment on the.
The notes that I'd put there, 692A. I don't know if we need to get any further than just 692A. I guess not. If you read 692A, it gets into back to what we were talking about, non-transplanted organ, because we've answered that with the other. So I guess we're fine on that. That was just one of my side notes. Because if you do go into 692A down in section 6E 1 through 4, it lines all that out and actually answers the questions in which came up previously earlier on in our conversations in regards to that. And now that we've defined gross specimen and all of that, I think we resolved this notation. Unless Dr. Ali had something additional on the stakeholder notes.
No, but on section E here on exportation, it says no body or anatomical specimen under jurisdiction of the commission, including donations to tissue banks. Including donations to tissue banks. Now, are we saying that a tissue bank, if they're going to send anything out of the state of Texas, has to ask the commission? I thought the tissue banks were being excluded because of the material they're using is not under the purview of the funeral commission. Because if the tissue bank,
they are. If you look in 692A, tissue banks have to that they were under the old SAB jurisdiction, and they're now under the commission's jurisdiction.
But this is not it's not transplant tissue; it's non-transplant tissue. Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah. Let me go pull it.
Like I'm saying, if they procure a heart in Austin and they want to get it to Louisiana, we don't have the time to ask the funeral commission if that's okay. We're talking about hours here, right? So that's not what we're talking about. That's transplantable material.
Right. Transplantable does not fall under. And if I am correct, you may be correct, Dr. Ali. On
correct. I just want to make sure this doesn't make it sound like transplants included in this, right? Because it's not. But if a tissue bank has a person who's donated their tissue to them, but also wants the body donated to science, then it falls under the commission's jurisdiction. Not
what 692A, I believe it's 011 6E 1 through 4. It defines out this specifically, and if I read it incorrectly, then Chairman Opiella is correct. They do have to notify the commission on sending out any tissue, any organs that were not transplanted, if they're sending them out of the state to a research organization. If I read it correctly, it exempts them from having to report that exportation of those non-transplanted items for the purpose of research or education. But we'd have to read back through 692A.
Thought that's the way we read that a while ago.
And that's how we read it a while ago. And then, by the way, we put together as far as specimen size, etc.
So 692A 011. And by the way, that was the exact language of the SAB rule. We didn't change. The only thing we changed was board to commission there.
Yeah.
And added anatomical specimen, just to be clear. So if we had it wrong, the SAB had it wrong for 100 years. So it says I or tissue bank, except that use of a gift of a whole body must be coordinated through the Texas Funeral Service Commission. So that makes clear that the tissue banks have to work with us on a gift of a whole body. You know, it could be through the Will Body or NATO programs.
Yeah.
And then it says,
if you read Commissioner Opiella, if you read 1 up there, it answers our question.
Yes.
An organ procurement organization used for transplant therapy, research, or education. So they can technically dictate what is done with that organ procurement without us, because it's not the whole body. If it was the whole body, then they would have to include us.
Correct. OPOs would, but not every LPO is a tissue bank, right?
They're dealing in tissue or small cell in some capacity.
Okay.
Can you go back to
Then it says, except for donations, an A1 through 6, the funeral commission or NATO shall be the donee of gifts of bodies made for the purpose of education or research. So that's exactly what he was saying here, is that research can be done through an OPO, eye bank or tissue bank, a hospital, I guess a forensic science program, search and rescue. I don't know what research they're doing, but TFSC or a NATO. But it says
1 through 6. So that
1 through 6. That's right. 1 through 6. So that's so OPOs can procure gifts for research.
So that goes back to what we were just discussing. The wording of that particular rule is not correct in accordance with this.
Well, then, but it doesn't say anything about. So the SAB rule was incorrect. Is that what you're saying?
I think the SAB rule reverted back to their jurisdiction under 691 is what the SAB rule, as far as whole donation in reference to the body, was kind of, I think, what was their intent when they originally did that one, and just said if it falls under 691 with the exception of organ and tissue procurement, it's ours. If it doesn't fall under that, or if it doesn't, then they do what they normally do with it, which would make sense when you read 692A.
Okay.
But the wording of the first sentence, like Dr. Ali was reading through, that I think that's what caught me, and I didn't see it the second. Didn't compute the second time through. Was that we don't have jurisdiction over the non-transplanted tissue that they have already procured for redistribution for research. Correct?
correct.
Did I say that correctly?
So what do we need to change on E, on the new E?
Like the part about including donations to tissue banks, Jason?
I mean, y'all all read it too. I'm saying yes.
Or you would say including donations of whole bodies to tissue banks. Because if you go back to 692A, it says that whole bodies donated to tissue banks must be through the commission.
So you could add that in there. I haven't seen anyone attempt to try that, accepting a whole body through a tissue bank, but you would definitely head off any future thought process of.
That's what the statute says, is that they can accept an eye or an anatomical gift may be made to the following persons named in the document of gift, ... an eye bank or tissue bank, except that use of a gift of a whole body must be coordinated through the Texas Funeral Service Commission. That sounds like they can get a whole body, but they have to coordinate with us.
Correct. So I guess that is a true statement based upon that, as if they were willing to accept a whole body through their organization, they would have to coordinate it with the commission, because it says accept the donation of a whole body, which most of them aren't going to do that. And that's why we get the referrals at the time that they do a harvesting.
Sure.
So I guess as a safety net, leaving it as that would be okay, but you may want to put in the whole body part, or otherwise I would feel that, like your representative that was at your last meeting would probably pipe up and say, wait a minute, why are we having to call y'all every time we move something around?
So we would, of whole bodies.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that would save.
Okay.
I have two other things that came up, and I apologize. I should have brought this up earlier. Out-of-state transfers. And currently right now, I think we've proposed the rule of the onus is on the Willed Body Program or whichever organization wants to export out, that you need to go check their facility. You need to make sure it's the right place, entity, and all those kind of things. One of the stakeholders came back and said, no, I think the funeral commission should be doing a video inspection of that facility in whatever said site or
Take a look at the language that we published at the meeting. We added video inspection as a ability. That was Dr. Gilbert wanted that.
Okay. Yeah, I was given a text this morning and I didn't know that was in there already. So the commission can do a video or in-person site inspection. Is that what that's saying?
Commission doesn't have long arm jurisdiction outside of the state of Texas. We can't send our inspectors to North Carolina. So we're asking the holding institution to go and do a video inspection or an in-person visit. So they could say to, Burrell College of Osteopathic Medicine, go in and Zoom us and FaceTime us and show us the locked your room that you're in, right? Or your
right.
Take us through the receiving and use process.
Receiving and yes, and loading dock and things like that. Yeah. So all of that. And there was also a provision that was added to require the review of the materials required for a registrant in Texas. So those are the procedures for ensuring the dignity of the human body and the implementation of those.
The section that,
sorry.
No, I was just saying that's fine. I didn't know that was in there. That looks great.
Okay.
The section you were. Go ahead, Kurt.
Hi, Commissioner Opiola, can you move up to D? Keep going right there. The importation. Remember last meeting we agreed that it could be writing or telephone, a phone call to the commission, and only here it says writing now. Remember the 2 o'clock in the morning?
Yeah, that was the old SAB rule.
The last meeting, remember I said if I get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning,
I remember your discussion about that, about picking up a body in Louisiana, right? Or you had
correct. And you said notification as long as we notify the Funeral Service Commission by phone or writing, you said.
So remember we had a discussion. We had a discussion in one of our meetings about PII, and the way we were going to do this was through the online system because of the PII issues.
Okay.
And so I'm worried about leaving a voicemail with all of the information, the name of the donor and others, that on a commission voicemail message in our office. Because obviously if you're doing that in the middle of the night, no one's going to be working here.
Correct.
Do it by email. It's better anyhow.
Well, I think we're going to have an online system to submit those records.
In the interim of the online system coming up, and it's something you could send out to the organizations, because in essence, I know the PII, but if we're going to be registering these donors again, providing their information through the database, a email or even a phone call of this is Kurt at UT McGovern. I am receiving a donor in from Louisiana. It's currently 2 a.m. This donor is going to be assigned number 1234, and their online registration will follow during business hours. Boom. You're notified that the transfer of that donor that's registered with him is coming in from Louisiana. He's going to follow up with all of the disseminating or the other identifying information through the registration, and you have a cross-reference to the ID number that's going to flag that person came in. via email or a phone call, and then you don't have to worry about PII until we get the automated system up. Because the point that I'm making is that right now we already have donors that are potentially passing in other states that we've got to honor their donation, and we need an avenue to do so.
So that wouldn't necessarily be addressed in the rule because
No, it's not in the rule, but we're wanting to verify that we're okay to do that right now.
Maria, our executive director's here, so she can give us some insight.
My only concern is in the event that it just kind of fall off, and then it's hearsay. I was told. And I feel more comfortable if it was
That's why I
just
sent an email.
Well,
I
this
don't
is
think a
not,
phone call will work at all because you don't have any way to track it. You need
Right.
to
Well,
do an email to
email
get a
would be
paper
fine.
trail.
but also too, I don't want there to be confusion. We're not talking about taking in 2 legs from Louisiana. We're talking about a registered donor that's registered with one of our in-state will body programs. It's a whole body coming, and it's not coming for an event. It's coming for the initial intake to the anatomical.
That's fine, but it still needs to be an email, not a phone call.
Which is fine. We
it
can
needs to
send
be
an
an email
email.
so you got a paper trail.
But what do you want on the email is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because 2 weeks ago we agreed. Commissioner OPL has said I could call at 2:00 in the morning. So we would just need to make sure so I can let the funeral homes know that we deal with that we're all on the same page. That phone call is not going to work now. It's going to be an email. What needs to be in the email then?
Put an email that it's your program. You're taking in one donor from wherever, from Louisiana, and you're assigning it this number.
Well, we won't know the number until it gets here. I mean, I can't assign a number to it until it gets here. Because if I have 3 more bodies that came in before that one gets here, they come in, whatever they come in, the time they come in, they're assigned the number. So
you can pull the number though.
You can pull it. You can't pull one and air mark it for them.
Yeah, you could pull a number and air mark it for that body.
Because if I get 3 during the night, whoever my first call is gets the first number, and it doesn't matter when I get them into the facility; they're already assigned that number.
We don't do it that way. They're assigned. They're not here. They're not until they come through that door. They're not assigned to us. I mean, once they come through the door, that's when they're actually. Just because we admit it or we accept it, I can say I accept this body now. In 2 weeks or a week later, they had a funeral over there in Louisiana. Now I'm accepting it. That number is going to be way off, and I don't have all the specifics on it.
So Kurt, when we look at the statute in 691.031, when you're transporting a body or anatomical specimen, you're supposed to keep on file a description of the body or anatomical specimen that includes the deceased name, if known, color, sex, age, place, and supposed cause of death, and identification information such as the existence of scars or deformities. Why would you not be able to put that information in the email so that establishes that first chain of custody?
Oh, no, I can do all that. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the registration number is what we're talking about.
Okay.
The Funeral Service Commission. I can give you all the criteria.
But from the transport, just the overnight transport from Louisiana into Texas, before you register it online, if you would just give us that information, that would allow you to identify that body. That way, if the state trooper stops them at the in Beaumont, we have an idea of who that person is, right?
Yes, sir. No, I understand that. They were just suggesting that I already have the funeral numbers that y'all issue to us assigned to that one specific before it comes.
I don't think you need those until you register. Until you register that body, you don't need the number, right, Maria?
Right.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Sorry for the confusion, but I think when we had that conversation, we weren't thinking about a lot of the.
No, I know, because it says just notify the Funeral Service Commission, and you held up the phone. It's like you phoned me, that's notification. But now since we got it all straight, that written's better.
Yeah, we weren't thinking through it.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
That's why we have an advisory committee, and that's why we work through this. So
yes, sir.
Assuming that also applies to NATOs as well, right? If we receive a donor from Texas and export that donor out of Texas, we just send an email with that same information that we just discussed.
Yeah, that's
Till we get the registration,
Till we get the system
till we
online.
get the system online.
Okay.
That brings me back up. I'm sorry. On the other thing that exempt the commercial skeletons, on the, which one was that?
That was in the definition.
It only, I didn't see plastinated on the one that you listed a while ago.
We took that out at the commission meeting.
So
So
all
there was-
plastinated materials got to be registered?
We left that open because of the concern about the source materials, source of where those donors were coming from. Dr. Ali and I think Charlie were both here, and we had that discussion about we didn't want to exclude plastinated specimens. I mean, you know some of the problems that you've had in other states with potential sources of those not coming with consent, such as slave laborers in China and other things like that. We didn't feel comfortable accepting those from regulation of the jurisdiction of the commission.
Okay, so if Von Hagens wants to bring his body worlds back to the museum here in Texas, he's got to register it?
Yes.
Okay.
For those that,
what about all the plastic material that's already at these institutions? So we're not going to retro those, only new stuff coming in?
This is something that I think the advisory committee needs to consider, and we develop if it's just making sure that we have the consent of the donor and that we have that, on file, then I think that's okay. But that's something that the advisory committee needs to flesh out.
I like the idea of if we're focusing on the plastinated part of this anatomical, that there simply is something that states that the commission at any time may ask for the donor registration paperwork, including the consent. And you guys can ask for it every single time. And the consent must meet Texas rules and regulations. That way they can come. They just need to supply the right documents. So instead of actually registering the body and if they're bringing 50 bodies, this and that, the commission has the authority to ask them for the consent paperwork. Now, if you want to say to them every single time you're thinking about bringing one of these in or sending a specimen to a medical school, they may just send a small specimen to medical school. Are you going to ask for that microscopic slide to also be registered, or are you talking about the whole body coming in a body's exhibition?
No, these are just the plastinated specimens. These are the ones that are, what did you say, Von
Hagen.
Von Hagen. Because remember, you had said that there were sources other than Von Hagen that also do plastinated, and that there are actually 2 facilities in the United States that do plastination.
Correct.
And then, of course, the Chinese plastination that has created a scandal in other states. So perhaps what y'all need to do is recommend to us a rule that deals with plastinated specimens and what we do. If it's just the chief concern is, did the people consent? It's not so much the health safety associated with it, right? That you would have with a normal anatomical specimen, because they are plastinated. But the concern that was raised at the commission meeting was donor consent.
Correct.
Perhaps you focus on donor consent.
I'll reach out to one of the suppliers to see if that's even something that they would or could provide to us, since we're talking international.
I would hope that would be the case, because that's,
Because our dental school, UT Dental School here in Houston, we bought a bunch of plastinated stuff from Von Hagens years ago because they moved to the South Campus and it's not feasible for them to bring students over to the dissection lab. So they got all the plastinated material at their school from Von Hagens, but that's all German stuff. So in the future, I guess we're not retro and they're not going to have to certify or register that stuff, but if they get anything else, they will, is what we're looking at, I guess.
I would say forward because
Yes, our prohibition on retroactive laws in Texas would, by definition, exempt items prior to the adoption of the rule.
Okay.
So we have a constitutional prohibition on retroactive effect. So.
Well, I know more schools in the future are going to go to plastinated material too, because from cost to curriculum changes and everything like that. So I know in the future it's going to be an issue that you're going to see coming up with this.
I just ask you guys, y'all are the advisory committee, come up with something that works for y'all, but also make sure that we are not having people who did not donate their body for this purpose.
I don't think
will, right?
I don't think the ones that are in the US or the ones that are coming from internationally would have an issue with us saying, in order for your product to be used here in Texas, you must show us the donor consent paperwork saying they allowed for this. And the legitimate ones are going to will say, absolutely. Where do you want me to send it? And the ones that
the
don't play by
illegitimate ones won't come to Texas.
Exactly. And that's fine. I think that's the easiest way to propose, or the philosophy behind this should be, once again, the donor consent.
There's been a problem with this in other states. I mean, protesters at museums and things like that, and we don't need that in Texas.
As a committee, we need to take into consideration that the consents that are coming from Germany or wherever else may not follow the same punctual lines that ours do here in the state of Texas. Are we going to, as long as it's a consent that they donated their bodies for the purpose of that organization, period? Or are we going to, does it have to be down to the fact like we did with our one pager? Because I can tell you, like, for instance, now with the institution that I'm at, we probably have one of the largest plastinate collections in the state from the time that this opened up. And we've got everything from full bodies to busts to shoulders to knees to hands and everything else. So, but if they just have a single consent form that says I've donated my body to this institution for, anatomical study, is that going to be sufficient?
Y'all give us the language that'll work.
Sounds like we need a work group on that.
That's what I was thinking to say. We need to put a work group on it. So, Jason Jones.
Yes, sir.
Volunteered. Jason Owens. And I'll work with y'all on that.
Okay.
Our chief concern as a commission at the discussion that we had last Friday was consent. So if it's related to, you get an idea of what we don't feel comfortable with. We don't feel comfortable with someone who, these roving exhibits of people who were from a communist country, not necessarily had their bodies donated of their own free will, which unfortunately happened.
Okay.
So if we can keep those out of Texas, but allow you to do what you need to do to educate your students, that sounds reasonable.
Okay, moving on.
I didn't have any other stakeholder input on any other proposed rules unless someone else did.
Okay.
Y'all want to just come back next week? Because we didn't really get too much on the agenda beyond and maybe we're not prepared for that at this meeting.
I think we need to come back next week.
Okay.
And I think I think Maria just sent all the new rules out with all the edits and everything that will allow us to all look at everything that's proposed, anything the commission struck through or added in, and then we can, if there's proposed rules we can skip because we've discussed them now, we can go to the ones that we haven't hit and try to cover all that on the next meeting, allowing us to by the 22nd to have final proposals to your commission, sir.
We will definitely get those to you. I envision the rest of the agenda items being new rules that are not necessarily amendments to what have been published, because they really go outside the scope of what we sent for publication. The minimum standards for hotel and convention center meeting facilities probably needs to be a separate rule. For the informational document, that's actually not a rule. Y'all just need to give us the informational document that we're supposed to publish. I think you had one prepared, Dr. Ali, and I think there was this is the 6910225 document, kind of facts about donation document. I think there were 2 copies floating around. We need to just figure out which one it is, and the commission staff will put it on the agenda, on the website. We talked already about transportation standards. And then this was also in the statute. This is, it was in a bill in 2721. There was a proposed requirement for serological testing for Hep B, Hep C, and AIDS. Whether we need to require specimens to be tested for that.
My understanding is I don't think there's a NATO or World Body Program out there that doesn't do that screening. Is that not true? I know Marion Science Care do.
You are correct, Dr. Ali. Most of them don't, but I believe that question came up because there were those that had made comment of, well, it's not in rule, so why do we have to do it? It's another expense that we have. So I think it would be advisable that we adopt something to put in there minimal standards for serology BXYZ. That way nobody can say that and go, well, it's not required and it's not in rule.
I think there's a little forward. There's also it's a part of AATB regulation that we test for those 3 items.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. And I know there's not a single medical device company that would come to my anatomic facility without knowing that the serology was done and is all negative. We're not allowed to use tissue with anybody that has any kind of serological issues. So if that needs to be put in a proposed rule, so it's very clear, so if some people don't go around it, let's do it.
And even before we were AATB accredited, we did the same testing.
Yeah. And this is only for fresh material, not embalmed material. We do not serology or embalmed bodies.
And that's another question that comes up.
Is there a chance that the infections that you have here would spread through embalmed materials?
Well, the aldehydes kill everything that's in the body. That's why we don't. But if a death certificate comes in with any communicable disease on it, then of course we cremate it. But the serology, everybody that came in, even bomb, that's not feasible for us because some of them you can't even get blood out of these bodies. So they're embalmed for all the schools that we supply to.
What about?
So we don't accept anything communicable. So if, when we take the first call, of course, if they say they have Hep or HIV or COVID, we don't accept the donation. When it gets to our facility, if we use it for a fresh, we serology it. And if we don't use it for a fresh, if we're going to embalm it, we don't serology it because some of the bodies you cannot get blood out of no matter what you try. So those are embalmed. And if there's anything in the body that has never been or any communicable, the aldehydes will kill it. We wait a month before we use anybody so that the aldehydes had long enough to preserve it or disinfect it, and then it's used. Now, if a death certificate comes in after the fact, it's been embalmed, that has any communicable disease on it or COVID, then that body is taken out of service and cremated immediately. Our program here, we don't use anything that's communicable at all.
Could we put that detail sequence that you just went through in a rule? You either have to test, or if it isn't, test it or if it's embalmed, then we don't have to test it unless it's comes back on the death certificate as one of the causes of death. And then if that's the case, you must immediately cremate the body. Does that sound reasonable to everyone?
Yeah,
It does to me.
does to me. Because on the other side, would like to Dr. Ali's point, you've got device companies and everybody else. I can tell you this: Johnson & Johnson, if they're utilizing fresh material, they will not accept fresh material from a provider that does not do serology through an FDA approved facility for serology. So, but yeah, I mean, everything we just discussed could be put into a rule very easily with all the guidelines and parameters, and that way it's transparent, everybody sees it, and it's just our standard.
The labs that we use have to be what's called CLIA certified.
I think that was what was in the statute, that the proposed bill, the House committee report on that bill last session. That was something that they were going to require us by statute to do. So I think it'd be good to get ahead of that, and that because that falls anyway under protecting the public health that we're already authorized to do here. So,
and this rule is only going to affect the will body program. NATO's don't deal with embalm, so it's only all the ones that deal with it.
Well, and like was just said, the NATO's already do test, right? Am I getting that right, Mike? He's muted.
I think, Kurt, the easiest thing to...
Sorry, we test every donor, whether they're embalmed or not.
Mike, do y'all accept embalmed bodies?
No, we embalm. We have them embalmed.
Okay. I didn't know y'all were embalming or accepting embalmed bodies. All right.
We don't accept embalmed bodies, but we test every donor. Some of those end up getting embalmed.
So can y'all...
I think, Kurt, the simple rule could be, an anatomical specimen is donated and comes into the system, and every single one that's a non-embalmed body will be CLIA certified with these three: hepatitis B and C and HIV. And then those bodies that are immediately embalmed with formaldehyde or aldehyde type preservation fluids. But you're not checking it. The only way you're going to check it is by a history or a death certificate, right?
Correct. That's the only way you will know.
So I'm trying to figure out how you're going to put that into a proposed rule. The first part's easy. Every specimen coming in that's going to be fresh frozen needs to have serology done. The second part of we're going to do preservative techniques that kill the viruses. If we find out with history, then we will remove those from the inventory. If that's what's going to be in the proposed rule. But if you don't get it from history, I mean, we've had multiple people donated to us that there was nothing in the history, but we ran the serology and they came up Hep B or Hep C positive. So what are you going to do with the ones that you didn't get the history, but they do have hepatitis? Or is the claim the formaldehyde's killed it, so you don't have to worry about it anyway? So then why do serology on any formaldehyde or take them out of inventory even if they come out positive?
Well, some schools do use them because the aldehyde does that. Our school, we don't. If you come back with death certificate that's communicable, we don't use you. But there has been in the past other schools, since the aldehydes do kill it, they'll use it. But a student's not going to dissect a body that has hepatitis B listed as cause of death because all the students get all that.
Sure.
So we
I
take
think
it out.
that's an internal thing for the institution, but I think for a proposed rule for the funeral commission, it's all anatomical specimen coming in that's fresh frozen and it will not be preserved with aldehydes must have a serology, a CLIA certified serology setup.
So I understand, definitely.
And I think that's it. Do you need to put in there that if they're being preserved with formaldehydes, they don't need it unless a history shows it or all the other stuff? I think that sounds more like it's an institutional thing that if this institution will use them, then they use them. If the ones that don't, they don't.
Yeah, because we still have other institutions that are will body programs that they test everyone that comes through the door, regardless if they're going to embalm it or not. And that way we know that, that they are free of communicable,
right?
Regardless if we've done the preparation process or not.
Kurt, how would that affect you guys if everybody's...
Formaldehyde kills it? I don't know. I'm not a...
So I looked it up online and it says formaldehyde does kill all forms of hepatitis, including A, B, and C.
But what about AIDS?
AIDS has to have a living host to live.
Yeah, 24 hours after it's dead.
HIV is just like COVID. It has to have a living host to live.
Okay.
Because
I'm not a doctor, so I don't.
If we try testing everybody, there's going to be bodies that we're going to accept that we're not going to get blood out of, that we're just going to have to immediately cremate. I mean, we get those because most of our bodies we try blood screening. And if we can't get blood out, we let them warm it. It just depends from clots to whatever it is. You can't get serology out of them. They're embalmed and they're used. So, I mean, no one told us they had any communicable diseases. The hospital didn't, family didn't, or anything like that. So they didn't know. And the aldehydes kill it. But if it comes in on a death certificate, of course, we wouldn't accept it in the first place if it did have that on the death certificate. But if it does come in on the death certificate, we do not use the specimen. I mean, because you're not going to get blood out of every specimen. And then if we accept that body, I mean, it's going to limit a lot. We're going to have issues me supplying schools. Because right now I supply over 100 embalmed bodies to 10 different schools in the state. And there's no way I'm going to be able to supply all those. Then we're going to get back to the issue about the procurement, and y'all got to decide who gets what.
Chair Fulton, can you get Kurt on a committee with Dr. Ali and just come up with some language that works yet protects the public? That's all. The concern here is making sure that the students are protected, right? Which I know you're concerned about. The public is protected and doesn't unnecessarily regulate in a way that prevents you from having an adequate supply.
Yeah.
So Dr. Ali and Kurt, y'all come up with some kind of language.
Does the Department of Public Health have any standards and regulations for this? For infectious materials transport, or I would think that it might fall under the scope of.
It's a good question. I just took that from the statutory language. It was going to require everything to be tested.
Does the Senate bill or 691 or 2 say we have to?
It does not currently. This was legislation that was proposed last session, but didn't make it out for the House calendar. It went through the Senate, passed in the Senate, went through the House committee, and this is the House committee report. So it was just what was that?
Maybe give Kurt and I till next week to look and see what kind of research we can find and what some maybe federal or state other laws that may have to do with HIV and hepatitis, and we can kind of put it together. Maybe propose a rule that might cover it and take care of it. That way,
sure.
Like you said, protects the public.
So it was going to add a new section that said serological testing required for each body or anatomical specimen. An anatomical supplier, and that was some language in there, acquires. The anatomical supplier shall ensure the body or anatomical specimen receives full serological testing from a testing laboratory that holds a certificate issued by the Federal Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services for compliance with clinical laboratory improvement amendments of 1988 and 42 USC sections 263A. And then it says the test results described by subdivision 1 show no indication of hepatitis B, C, or HIV/AIDS, and the medical or social history of the individual whose bodies or anatomical specimen was donated accompanies the test results described by subdivision 1. So that's an and, it's not an or. So you would have to have not only the test results showing they're negative for every specimen, but also the medical and social history of the individual with those results.
Wow.
But that's the proposed bill that didn't pass, right?
Correct. Correct.
That's not our current bill.
The idea here is that we get ahead of this and we make sure that we're protecting the public in a way that's responsible along those lines.
We already do that. I think a lot of organizations do.
Just come up with something that doesn't, that protects the public and does not unnecessarily regulate this to the point where you would not have an adequate number of specimens, like what Kurt was saying.
Because most will body programs do not test their embalmed bodies. So you're looking at a higher expense for every will body program, plus, the bodies that will not be used, or if we won't be able to accept any bodies, I get calls all the time from people get dropped for some administrative reason that are donated to us, but we get them a week later. And there's no way we're getting serology out of somebody that's been dead in the cooler for a week. So we would be declining almost all bodies after 48 hours and stuff. I mean, it's going to be very limited if we try that.
Whatever the science supports, that's what I'm asking y'all to come up with something. If it's not going to be a public health concern and the science supports that, that's why we're asking you and Dr. Ali to come up with this.
Okay.
You can justify this with the science, then that's an appropriate rule for us to pass. If the science doesn't support it, then it isn't. That's why we have the advisory committee.
Yeah. And we definitely need that because we don't need to get into the med social and everything else. And perhaps in the next legislative item that comes up, if it has that, we can omit that half of it.
Okay. Everything else good?
If the commission does its job, the legislature doesn't have to come in and do that.
Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to get ahead of this sunset process here. Okay. Thank you for all your help, guys. I know it's a burden. I've really put a burden on you guys, but I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm going to entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Have a second.
Very good. Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.
See y'all next week.
Thank God. See y'all.